Commissioner oh, there you are. Okay.
Just making sure it's getting there in the right place. Hi, Danielle, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay. Good morning, Chair Roybal.
Good morning, everybody. Can you hear me okay?
Thank you for encouraging us to have these new mics. I think they help tremendously.
Yeah, absolutely. And I wanted to, I guess we have to mute on the unmute on the screen still, or do we unmute it once and then we just have to unmute the base? I mean, mute and unmute the base. Is that correct, Daniel?
So it's up to you. You can mute and unmute using WebEx, but if you want to use the mute feature on your microphone, WebEx has to be unmuted.
Okay, so I just wanted to test it real quick. So you can hear me now?
Yes. And now I can't hear you.
Okay, perfect. I just want to make sure it worked. Cool. Well, thank you guys for looking into these mics, and it really seems like they're going to be a beneficial. Do they say, is the quality a lot better?
Absolutely.
I think the quality is much better, and I hope for the stenographer that it's the quality is better.
But it's not working. So,
I know. Yeah.
So do we?
Seems better already.
In? Tessa Joe, do you know if everybody's in?
Commissioner Garcia is attempting to sign in right now.
Okay, perfect. We'll go ahead and wait a few more minutes and then we'll get started.
Mr. Chair, The clerk is trying to call in. She's having a problem calling in, but she will be here shortly.
Okay, thank you for the update.
Here, Roy Ball.
Yeah,
My apologies. I saw you talking and I thought my computer was malfunctioning. Uh,
Oh,
you were not talking
oh.
to us, were you?
no, sir. No, ma'am. I was on the other line, but we'll start as soon as Commissioner Garcia gets on. Thank you.
Not a problem.
Tessa Joe, the clerk would like to see if you could mute her. But I'm in. Yes. I don't hear her on the TV.
Mute her or unmute her. Is she a call-in user?
She must be a calling user, yes.
Yes, she is a calling user.
Yes.
Okay, so
You hear?
okay, I'm gonna unmute.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Clerk Salazar?
She's user 8, Tessa Joe.
Okay, I will mark her name.
Here's how to hang up an iPhone with the click of a button. How do you?
She says you can call and I can try to walk you through it. I think that'd be a good idea. What do you think?
It looks like she signed out. Is she having some phone issues?
Okay.
I hear people talking, but they don't hear me.
Oh, no, see, I hear you. You're not on mute.
Okay,
Hello?
We can hear you, Geraldine.
thank you. I
We
appreciate
don't seem to have audio. We can't hear anybody.
This is Rudy. I'm here. Thank you.
Sorry, I can't hear you.
We can't, his microphone isn't working.
Okay, so is it plugged in and is the red light on?
Yes.
Go to WebEx, and there should be, you know, a
If this is Commissioner Moreno,
screen.
we can't hear you. It is unmuted.
Record, and there's like a ellipses or like 3 dots.
Moreno,
Grid view,
you are unmuted.
full
Hey,
screen,
they can't hear
participant
us.
meeting, edit, share.
Okay, I'm going to mute them just for a second while they work that out.
Okay, I think that we have all the commissioners online now. Is that correct, Tessa Jo?
Yes.
Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and call our, this is a special meeting of the Board of County Commissioners of Santa Fe County. Today's June 30th, 2020. And for the official time, it's 9:44. Can I have a roll call?
Chair Roy Ball, this is Geraldine Salazar.
Thank
you
you,
hear me?
Madam Clerk. I am here. Yes, I can hear you, and I am here.
Thank you so much. Chair Roy Ball,
Here.
Commissioner Hanson,
I am present, but Chair Roybal, we can't see you.
Commissioner Hamilton,
Here.
Commissioner Garcia.
Present via Zoom.
Thank you.
Maybe,
Commissioner Moreno.
yours up?
It's up all the way.
Okay. Try disconnect.
Commissioner Moreno.
It looks like Commissioner Moreno is on, but they're still having audio issues.
Okay. We'll wait a few seconds.
Tessa, can you unmute? There he is.
Commissioner Moreno. Commissioner Moreno, we're doing roll call right now. Chair Roy Ball, how would you like to proceed?
I can see that Commissioner Moreno is signed in, but it looks like he's having some technical difficulties. So we'll go ahead and we'll count him as present at this point.
Okay. Okay, for the record, all 5 of you are on. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Okay, so next we're going to go on to our next agenda item, and this is the approval of the agenda. Has everybody had the opportunity to review the agenda, and is there any changes or amendments to the agenda? Manager Miller, did you have any changes or amendments to this agenda?
Mr. Chair, no, I don't. I think we're good to go.
Okay. If there's not any other changes or concerns from the board,
Mr. Chair,
yes?
I had moved to approve the agenda.
So we have a motion to approve from Commissioner Hamilton. Do I hear a second?
Second,
And a
from
second.
Commissioner Hanson.
Thank you, Commissioner Hanson. I'm going to go to a roll call vote. Commissioner Hanson,
Yes.
Commissioner Hamilton,
Yes.
Commissioner Garcia,
Yes.
Commissioner Moreno, and a yes from Commissioner Roybal. So we're going to count that as 4 yeses at this point. Motion passes. We're going to go on to our next agenda item, and this is going to be under tab number 2. This is capital planning and budget approval. The first one is a presentation on recently completed capital projects, and we have from Public Works Department our director Gary Hiron.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, Commissioners. We have worked with Daniel Frescas. Thank you, Daniel, for all your time and efforts in this, to put together a video presentation of some of the projects that we have done in the past year. I did want to let you know that as we reviewed it, we have worked feverishly to get this done, and we have 3 small mistakes in it. So I just want to make sure people understand. Casino was already done in 2019. La Barbaria was done in 2019, and CR 72A was done in 2019. These are all completed projects, even though on the screen you'll see 2020. And then I just wanted to say one other thing, and that is there are some projects. Yes.
Sorry to interrupt, sir, but I was wondering, can you, when you talk about these projects, can you give us an idea of which districts or which locations of the county?
Yes, we can get all of that information for you as we go through the video. It's on the video. And so you'll see that.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Chairman, I wanted to go through and just say that as we started this, we didn't get all of our projects in. The road crew has been busy for the past 8 weeks. All of the chip seal and overlay projects. So in the past 8 weeks, we have completed CR 42, Camino Los Abuelos, 9.3 miles, CR 98, Juan Medina Road, 2.41 miles, Glorieta Road, Juego Court, Juego Place, Juego Road, Chusco Road, Carlito Road, Demora Road, Estambre. They've also done 2 inches of asphalt overlay on Shenandoah Trail, El Gancho Way, and they finished Old Santa Fe Trail yesterday. And I will tell you that with all of the crews and all of the staff and the team at Public Works, I think they've done an amazing job. And with that, I'll let Daniel show the video. And we will stand for questions.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, Commissioners. Tessa Joe just sent a link to the video. WebEx doesn't support smooth video playback or audio playback, so I would request, Mr. Chair, that you advise people to click on the link. If you are calling in, you can go to youtube.com and search for Santa Fe County and stream simultaneously while we watch it through WebEx, if that's okay, Mr. Chair.
That'll be perfect. Thank you, Mr. Frescas.
So, Mr. Chair, are we going to be able to watch it, or do we have to click on something? It's Rudy.
They're going to send you a link to your email address, and you'll have to open that link that they send you.
So, actually, Mr. Chair.
Now, click on the chat feature. Click on the chat feature on your screen. The little icon at the bottom that looks like a bubble, talking bubble. Click on that, and then over in the chat, just click on the link.
The YouTube link, yeah, there it is. Gotcha.
See it?
Yeah.
Got it. I do.
And when you click that, it will take you to YouTube and start playing the video.
All right, and I'd like to also request that we do a blanket mute. As the commissioners come back, you guys can unmute yourselves. That way to avoid any audio feedback from the video playing on computers.
Yes, we can.
Okay, that was a great video. Do we have any comments from commissioners on the video? Glad to hear that Commissioner Moreno, you're on.
Mr. Chair, I have some comments when you're ready for them.
Okay, so I'm gonna first, I wanted to just commend the videos. See,
Mr. Chair, your internet is breaking up, so we can't hear you very well.
the idea is that we have had okay, can you hear me any better now?
Yes, that's better. Thank you.
Okay, glad to see you have been able to join us, Commissioner Moreno, and just wanted to commend Public Works for the projects that they've gotten done. It's really great to be able to see a lot of these projects that were only a thought and now they're completed. So it's really great to see that. Commissioner Garcia?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just really quick, has everybody that worked on this, actually excellent video, excellent music. I could probably utilize a lot of that music here. Hold on real quick, Mr. Chair, please. If you could go to the next commissioner, that'd be great.
Commissioner Hansen?
Thank you, Daniel. That was a great video, of course. It's so, thank you for joining our team and making us look so much better than we have in the past. I really appreciate it. I only saw a few projects in District 2, but I know that I have a lot of sewer projects, which I always appreciate. And those might be a little harder to video. But it was nice to see the Public Works building in District 2, even though that is a county-wide project. Most of the things that were done in District 2 were county-wide projects, which I completely support, but I just want to make sure that my Agua Fria sewer is moving forward. And so thank you. That's all I have to say for the time being. Well, one more thing. I do have a number of roads in my district that need attention. And I look forward to speaking to that later on.
Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner Hansen. Commissioner Moreno?
Yeah, I understand that some El Dorado projects might not move forward, and some will take longer, but I trust the process, and we'll see. And that's why we do this. That's what's important. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Moreno. Commissioner Hamilton?
Thank you. I know we're going to get a chance to talk about details of projects, but I appreciated the video approach for showing completed projects. That was a very effective use of a drone and a good way to provide some perspective and detail for us that's otherwise hard to get. Was that by any wild chance done in-house? Is that a county drone, or was that a contractor?
That was with the county drone.
Fabulous.
Mr. Chair, Daniel Fresquez put that video together. He's our
Brilliant.
in-house expert on making any infrastructure project, even a sewer line, look good.
That's quite a compliment, even if backhanded. That's really perfect. And actually, that is a great thing to hear, because we know we can get this as needed, you know, on for other projects, and that's I am appreciative of hearing that.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Hamilton. Commissioner Garcia?
Yes, really quick, thank you for the excellent video, all staff that worked on it. And one of the things I just want to make sure is that has any project manager that it was involved with that video, have they seen that video? If they haven't, can you please have a special meeting with entire staff, Gary, and show them the video, because things like that go a long way. Public Works Department, Road Department, all projects, the guys that are out there with their boots, asphalt, pavement. As Catherine knows, this is an ex-representative, Whitaker, great gentleman from down south, part of the state. He actually used to always commend the Santa Fe County Public Works Department. He said, you know, why can't the entire state do what Santa Fe County is doing? We give them capital outlay money, and they go and get the job done themselves. And just kudos to the entire Public Works Department, you know, the entire Santa Fe County staff, obviously, but right now we're actually focusing on Public Works Department. And great video, great job, great music. I think I should take that music home and listen to it every single night. Just a great job, great video. Thank you, staff. Please tell your entire staff that, Gary, because we're all a team here. We all work together, but thank you.
Mr. Chairman, if I could, Commissioner Garcia, thank you for the comments and for everyone. I just wanted to say thank you to Daniel. He was very easy to work with and very helpful for us and very patient. But also wanted to say that the Public Works staff is an amazing staff. They get things done, and they really have a can-do attitude, and I think it shows up in the number of projects we have done and the number of projects you will hear about that are in the queue. And with that, we'll stand for any questions.
Mr. Chair, I would, this is Commissioner Hanson.
Go ahead.
I would also just like to really commend the Public Works staff. It is incredibly impressive how hard they work. And thank you, Gary and PJ and everyone. Barbara, I see you're on the line. You know, everyone. So I agree with Commissioner Garcia. It's really important to thank our staff for the hard work that they do to make Santa Fe County look so great. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Hanson. Okay, Commissioner, Director Hiron, if you'd like to continue.
With regard to the video in that presentation, that is that presentation. Manager Miller, how do you want to proceed from here?
I think we have the next on our item is item number 2B, and that's the review of the capital projects previously approved for inclusion in the 2021 budget. I'm not sure who's going to present on that. Is that you as well, Mr. Hiron?
Mr. Chair, I think what we need, and Daniel, do you have this spreadsheet? So what, commissioners, what we have is started with the video just to show you things that have been completed that we really haven't been able to do ribbon cuttings for because of COVID-19, or we haven't been able to at least all meet out at the site. As you can see, most of those projects, trail projects, solar projects, park projects, we would have a ribbon cutting with, you know, everybody there to commemorate finishing a project. Since we weren't able to do that, Public Works and Daniel went out and filmed as many of the things that we have finished over the last, I'll say probably 8 months, and presented that. We also have a lot of ongoing projects, and those And I think that the last BCC meeting, we did have kind of a list of what was already going to be built into the budget. And those are projects. And while, for instance, Commissioner Hanson, you talked about the sewer projects, they're not done, they're ongoing projects. We have the Antonio Lane and the another one of the sewer projects, plus the bigger sewer project. Those are all ongoing. Aurora Lift Station, I think is the other one, Vista Aurora. They weren't in the video because they're not completed. And when I say completed, meaning we're done, we're not dealing with the contractor on closeout anymore. But we have quite a few projects that are further along and still need to roll into next year's budget. And Gary and Barbara, did we get that spreadsheet that had that list? Because in your books, you have under your, I think it's under the tab 2A through D, you actually have a list of ongoing projects that total $81 million. And here we go. That's the list. Perfect, Daniel. So this is, the point of this one was just to let you see what is built into the FY 2021 budget that's rolling over from FY 2020 budget. So it means we're actively working on these projects, and there's about $81 million, $82 million of active projects that public works staff in roads, utilities, open space, vertical construction, all of these are currently underway. Sustainability, those are the projects that we have underway. We were able to keep that appropriation that we received, the $505,000. We had only spent a couple $100,000 of it. We thought the state might take it. We appealed that anything that we were actively working on, please don't take those appropriations. And it you'll hear later today the outcome of that, but it's good news that most of the things we had already started working on, so they weren't going to take those appropriations, and the photovoltaic ones were part of that. So I just wanted to make sure you could see detail of what projects are currently in the FY 20 budget and will roll. These amounts that you see, this 81, almost $82 million, will roll into the FY 21 budget. So when you see Joey's presentation later this morning, and you see that we have a $300+ million budget, these projects make up just this list right here, almost 82 million of that budget. So I think we would stand for questions if you want. This should have been emailed to you as well, but if you have any questions about any of these projects, Gary and PJ, Barbara, me, anybody else who's on the meeting could answer those questions.
And Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, if I could also add, this is a summary sheet. Behind this summary sheet in your workbooks is a narrative that has all of the details of every one of these projects in order that ties to this spreadsheet if you need more information on what these projects are.
Yes, and Mr. Chair, to add to what Gary said, it tells you the project that ties, the budget ties to what we're rolling over, and it tells you what the status is. So just an example, County Road 67F La Barberia, you might think, well, that's done. Well, we still have a final invoice to be paid and the project to be closed out. So there will be a small amount that rolls into the to the next year until we close out that project completely. So that's why we just wanted to make sure you could see the summary list as well as the detail of each one of those.
Mr. Chair, Manager Miller.
Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So In my book, I don't have an overlay sheet, but I have a list of all the projects. But you probably emailed that out last night. And so that was not in my book, this fully active, the list, but all the lists of all the projects were there. So
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Hanson, that's correct. There was not a list in your book. I asked staff to put a summary list together.
Okay.
Last night, I think that was emailed to you. If it wasn't, we'll make sure you get it.
Okay, I'm sure it was emailed to me. Thank you. I just wanted to check on that.
Okay, thank you, Manager Miller and Commissioner Hanson. Okay, so
So, Mr. Chair, there's also another list, and I think it's the next one. Yes, the next tab. These are also projects that are fully funded, built into the budget, but we have not started the specific project. We may have done some groundwork on it, but just wanted you to see these are projects that are also going to be in the budget because I know that some of you looked at the future project list and said, well, where's my road paving project or whatever? Well, some of them are already funded, so they're not ones we're asking for future funding. So you can see on this one, these are also being built into the 2021 budget. They're already in the system so that when we flip the switch on July 1st, they're in the system for as budgeted. But we have not started them yet. As you can see, between this list and the previous list, this list totals 14, almost 15 million. The other one was 82 million. It's a lot of projects, and they can't all start at once. So these are in the queue to get started on. Some of the paving projects this year, some of the construction projects, maybe not in the next few months, but definitely in the next fiscal year. But you can see also some of them have issues that we have to deal with first before we could actually start the construction. For instance, San Ildefonso right of way, the Blue Dove and Yellow Bird. As you know, we still have to finish surveys before we can, Larry Madrano's Precision Surveys has to finish the survey, and we have to complete that work with San Ildefonso and BIA before we could start construction, but we have the money to do so. And as soon as the right of way, the surveys are done, we'll start that project. So we just wanted to make sure you also saw that we had all of these projects in the queue and have them fully funded. And Commissioner Hanson, you had inquired about Agua Fria paving. It's right there. So you had requested that it be repaved, and that is in our local government road preservation project list. And it is scheduled to be done next or fiscal year 2021.
Yes, Daniel, could you move down the tab a little further also? Thank you, Manager Miller. I saw on here Lockwood Lane, but on the new list, did it get moved somewhere?
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Hanson, we'll talk about Lopez Lane, the sidewalk project. That's another one that you had inquired about. All we completed on that was a preliminary engineering report. It has not been designed. We do not have easements. It is recommended that we put funding in a 2020 bond question to finish the design and purchase the easements. That's going to take us several years before we would be able to do any construction. So our recommendation for construction is after we get a true design estimates for condemnation of people's front yards, if that's what it ends up being. so that we can get that project designed and get right-of-way and easements, and then put the funding for construction in place in either 2022 bond question or 2024, depending on how long it takes us to finish a design and acquire easements. We would just be sitting on the money for years if we actually went out for bonds for it now.
Yeah, and so I understand also that there was
so it's not on this list because it's not funded yet.
Right. Okay, that's fine.
Well, our next two items are projects that need either additional funding or need to be put in a bond question for funding, because we don't even have any funding on them. So Daniel, if you can go back to fully funded, I just want to make sure that all the board members get to see projects that are in their districts that are being built into the budget, and they know that they're in there.
And Manager Miller, Mr. Chairman, if I could add, if you'll notice, this has been a work in progress with Public Works, Finance, Planning, the Manager's Office to get this done. Anything you see highlighted in yellow has been changed or updated from the first version that went into your book. That's why we sent you updated sheets last night, because there were some things that we missed as we've gone through. I think we have everything in this list, and that this is the completed list of everything that is fully funded, not yet started.
And to add to what Gary said, Mr. Chair, Commissioners, those items that are in yellow were in the budget. They just weren't on the spreadsheet. So when we were reconciling these books with the budget, it was noted that they were in the budget, but they weren't on the list. So we just made sure that you could see them on this spreadsheet.
Mr. Chair, Manager Miller, can you tell me what tab this is so I can find it in the book? Because I can't see anywhere these days.
This particular sheet should be under, and we had to email you an updated one. And I don't think that the liaisons had an opportunity to print them out, but it's under 2A through D, and it's under, there's like 3 brown sheets in that part of your book. If you go to the list of, there's the projects that are one by one, and then there's it says active ongoing projects under the first brown sheet. And then if you go towards the back of that section, there's an item that says fully funded projects not yet started. And it's right there. But you can see the one in your book. It's right before the second brown sheet under that tab, items 2A through D. And it's on the back of the last sheet. And it has the list, but it doesn't have those items that are highlighted in yellow. And have the liaisons print this out for you and update your books as well.
So you will have them update our books? Is that what you said?
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Garcia, yes.
Thank you. And then, sorry, Mr. Chair, just once again, Madam Miller, this is actually kind of like Gary said, a moving target, work in progress, right?
Mr. Chair, Commissioners, yes, this is the first time we've put a book together like this, trying to make sure it includes everything that we have capital project funds for. Mind you, this is not equipment. This is just our facilities and our infrastructure capital projects. This is not the fixed asset part of the budget. This is that's a separate part of the budget, which is under Joe's presentation later today. But this is all capital projects, and we wanted to show you everything that's already actively going, and that's going to move into fiscal year 2021. And then this list that's already fully funded is built into fiscal year 2021 and will be started as it's in the queue. These projects will be started as we finish up other projects, and the capacity for the project managers to take on another project is freed up. They'll start being assigned these projects. And then the next list, if there aren't any questions on this one, are ones that we also have some money for, but we need additional money.
Manager Miller, Mr. Chairman, if I could also add, it's noteworthy to talk about bandwidth and how many projects are going on right now in Public Works. As we find new money and build new projects, we have to free up space in our workload to be able to add new projects into the queue. So it's also worth discussing or noting that there's a lot of things going on at Public Works right now.
Mr. Chair, I have a question when you have a moment, if I may.
Okay, thank you, Gary. And yeah, we know that Public Works is always very busy and always trying to keep the head above water and keep pushing forward. Is there any other? I know that I haven't heard from Commissioner Hamilton or Commissioner Moreno, so I'm going to go to Commissioner Hamilton and see if you had any additional comments or questions.
I did, and it's funny, Mr. Hiron, I was just going to ask about bandwidth, and especially with this sense of constraints in hiring and whatnot. How do you feel we're doing in terms of staffing to carry this project load now and in the very near future, since we're considering other projects?
Mr. Chairman, Commissioner, I will say that Manager Miller has been very active in working with us to make sure that our key positions are getting filled and that we are still able to continue with an active construction. So I feel optimistic that we're going to be able to move on all these projects.
Do you feel like we're about at capacity? So as you finish some projects and you take on some of these others on the list, you're able to do that, but not take on that much more? Can you put a few words on that?
Mr. Chairman, Commissioner, I will say that as we have projects, we're slipping projects into there, but we're also working to find efficiencies to see how we better manage projects, how we might have a different system so that we're managing all of this stuff electronically. So I think that we may be coming forward with some ideas about how we might become more efficient, but I still think that we have some capacity. We just need to figure out collectively how we are going to work better as a team and better define how we're doing these things.
Excellent, thank you.
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Hamilton, I wanted to add to that. Capacity is also driven by the type of project, because our project managers are project type specific. And I think that's one of the things Gary's alluding to, is that we're trying to see, okay, if I have a project manager that only works on, let's just say, AMIT, and there's nothing for them to do right now because we're at the mercy of the federal government doing something, can we reallocate that resource to work on other water and wastewater projects? I would say our water and wastewater projects, we definitely have bumped up against the capacity issue, which is why you'll also see in future projects why we're trying to say, hey, don't load up another 10 million on water and wastewater, because I can't move those projects fast enough. But we can, on roads, typically move those faster. But we also are limited when we do road improvements, overlays. We're limited by how much we can do in-house. We can do in-house much more cost effectively, but we only have so many staff that can do that. So it's always a balance on these projects on what do you bid out, what do you do in-house in roads, because you can get a lot more bang for the buck if you do it in-house, but then we're limited by the number of construction projects we can do in-house, just by the number of staff we have and the equipment we have. And then, but if you turn around and say, oh, we'll just contract them out, it can cost 2 to 3 times as much. So we only get 1 to 3 projects, you know. So all of that is a balance, and it's hard to say. What we're trying to do is make recommendations relative to future projects based upon not just a priority of a need, but also on capacity of the staff to manage them.
And Mr.
Thank
Chair,
you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Chair, this is PJ Montano. We're also working on projects manual to help assist and expedite some of these projects to make them a little bit more efficient with purchasing and projects. Because keep in mind, you know, there's a frame on Diego's side on the roads when he can actually get these done along with vertical projects. You know, we can't start projects in the middle of the winter. Also, when the budget gets freed up now in July, we take into consideration the bandwidth of procurement. We can't, you know, put 15 procurements on them all in July. So we're trying to stage these out and get a process to make everybody more efficient, not just Public Works.
Okay, thank you for that comment, PJ. Any other comments? I'm going to go back to Commissioner Garcia, and then I'll go to Commissioner Moreno.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just an excellent question or follow-up to Commissioner Hamilton's comments. I think there's a lot of work out there. There's tons of work. As me working in projects for many years, there's a lot of work out there. And I would like to see if you can somehow actually go and how do we figure out, I know PJ's working on a manual, but how do we figure out? Yes. Hold on one second. We need to somehow figure out how do you determine how much a project manager can handle so much of a workload and what type? Because every project is different. Some project managers are actually good in this area, but I guess that I would just like to see how we can figure that out, because we've been doing this for several years and there's a lot of work out there, a lot of work. And I'm glad to see that we're actually utilizing CES right now. We're utilizing CES and maybe the state contract price agreement, so on and so forth. But we can just keep that in mind as into how do we get these projects out? Because some of them have been sitting there for a little while, but just kind of food for thought. But thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Garcia. I'm going to go to Commissioner Moreno.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have very high expectation with this operation. The director and his staff have been, whenever I've been in meetings, it's professional and good information, and no exaggerations, and I've been very happy with the results of the projects that in District 5 in this case have been done professionally and completely. So I'm a big picture guy, and I think the operation is really top notch, and keep up the good work. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for those words, Commissioner Moreno, and very well said. We appreciate that. Can we go on with the what's it, the next item, Manager Miller?
Yes, Mr. Chair, if there aren't any more questions about those projects that are fully funded and built into the budget, we'll move on to some other projects, and I don't know if you can blow that up a little bit, Daniel. My eyes are, I'm definitely old and able to see that. So as you know, we also had, and I put this in our last BCC meeting, just for discussion today. This is one item we will be looking for approval for, and it's the only item this morning as far as capital projects that we're looking for approval for, because the rest of it is built into the budget, and then the future bond projects, I anticipate we'll have more discussion about that before we would ask for you to vote on that. So this one, but they kind of go together because I needed you to see where we're trying to capture all the priority projects in funding recommendations. So what this is are projects that most of them had some funding to them. The first batch for corrections, actually, there was money built into, or reserved, I should say, in the FY 2020 budget for these projects. Corrections has been requesting funding for them for over a year, and we just never got to putting together an entire capital budget study session for you last August, September timeframe because we had such turnover. And I also didn't want to piecemeal it. I wanted to make sure that you could see this comprehensive picture that showed what we had funded, what we were working on. As you know, our kind of the entire projects area had a little upheaval, and Public Works did last year. And so we didn't get to bring this to you. I had thought about bringing just corrections to you at one point because they've really done quite a bit of work on these projects already and are ready to go. The main one and the most extensive one is the recreation yard for special management units. You've toured the adult detention facility, and you know we have the rec yards, and they're just kind of one big open area. Well, we have a requirement to get ours, all of our inmates out of their cells for a certain amount of time, and particularly those in special management where they're not really housed in a group setting. To do that and to safely do that, we need to modify our recreation yard so that when our population is full, right now we have the good fortune of it not being that high, and we can rotate inmates through the yards the way they are. But what we really need is to separate those yards into smaller areas where individuals who can't be in a group setting are still able to get out into the recreation yard and have time outside of their cell, and in a rec area where there are other people as well, just divided by fencing and a safe barrier between them so that they don't harm each other or harm themselves or harm any of our staff. So that's the main one. The other one also, you know, we're doing a P25 radio communications upgrade. It's a multi-phased project with RECC, sheriffs, fire, and the detention facility. So this is funding for upgrading the radios at the adult detention facility. Then also, as you know, our front desk area definitely needs some remodeling. We built that facility in 1998 and have not remodeled that area or the master control. And both of those areas just need some upgrades and remodeling. So we're recommending that we use capital outlay GRT for those 4 projects. Then on the fire projects, Madrid fire suppression, that's a project that we do have state funding for. We believe that we're short by about $90,000. This is a high public safety issue. Also, it'll be leveraged with a much bigger project in the Madrid area with federal dollars. So that's one that we have already started work on and have a purchase order in place. We did not lose our state grant funding, so all we need is $90,000 that we want to get out of the fire excise tax fund to complete that one. Tasuki Fire Station, as you know, that wall, big wall behind the fire station, earthen wall needs stabilization. We also need $77,000 to complete that project and recommend that coming from the fire excise tax fund. And then the Northern County Transfer Station, Fire Station land acquisition, we're still, actually we did receive a response from the land grant that they do not want to sell us the property. Talked with Commissioner Roybal. He thinks there's still some possibility. They have not taken this to their entire voting membership. So we want to have another conversation with them. And what we're trying to do is purchase 15 acres from the land grant right off of the highway. We've already designed the transfer station. We went out to bid for it. We were short funding on it. So we're recommending another $500,000 to that project from capital outlay GRT so that we could purchase the land and get the transfer station completed. And then we would look at, in 2022, and we'll have this discussion in a minute, getting the additional funding for the fire station so that we could complete the fire station by, say, 2024, 2025. Also, if we're not able to come to some agreement with the land grant, we still need to find a location for a transfer station and another substation for Pewaukee. So we would just head back out looking at properties that were potential second choice for the fire station. They may not end up being on the same site if we can't work out something with the land grant, but we definitely need another fire station in that area, and we need to upgrade the transfer station that we currently have with Pewaukee or relocate it. So we're just recommending at the moment a request for $500,000 from capital outlay GRT for that project.
Can I ask a quick question?
Commissioner Hamilton, go ahead.
Hey, just on that point, Manager Miller, the money is recommended, and if in the eventuality that they don't, if we lose the option to buy the land for whatever reason, would this funding be applicable to Plan B, to the alternative of looking at another location?
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Hamilton, that's a really good question. I think so. Part of it, and actually we may be able to do it for less somewhere else. Part of the reason that project didn't come in our original budget, well, first of all, it was just a transfer station. Once we located that land, the fire department said, you know what, that's an ideal location for our substation. So it became 2 projects. But one of the things that drove the cost up so much was DOT said we had to create a new entrance to the land grant off of the highway for that kind of traffic that we would have for a transfer station. So, and then that would require a lot of earthwork. So it's been one of these projects that's really been difficult because we're constantly chasing something. But yes, and the project, the funding we have is predominantly for the transfer station. Predominantly, there's a little bit from an old general obligation bond, and is very specific to transfer stations. But most of it is capital outlay GRT. So the other thought process of why recommending this capital outlay GRT for the transfer station is that if it doesn't happen, it can always be reallocated to a different site, or it could be reallocated to a different project altogether if we just can't find a site and we stick with our site at Pewaukee. So this project itself is probably the most fluid one on the list because we haven't nailed down the site. We haven't been able to acquire that land. But additionally, the fire station side of it was with GO bonds money, and we didn't have enough to complete the fire station anyway. We took some of that to complete 3 other projects, fire station projects.
Right.
So we do know we need to add to that as well. And that was why we were looking at 2022, because we still have an issue with obtaining a site.
Right. But recognizing that both components of the project are important, but if that location falls through, you commented we still need the fire station, and so if there's sufficient fluidity in getting the money now, but it'll be applicable going forward because both of those things are needed. That was all I was wanting to get a little more information on. So thank you.
Yes, Mr. Chair, Commissioner Hamilton, yeah, both of them are needed, and we think that, the possibility is we would have to split them up, not have them as one project. I do know that the fire department did an assessment of properties in the area, and they did have, a second and third choice. And additionally, we do have our agreement with Pewaukee, and if we go back to 10 years ago, we were actually going to upgrade that site. So that money could be used if we have to split those projects up and go find other locations. It can be transferred to a different site.
Thanks. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Just Mr. Chair, really quick, if I can, this is Rudy.
Commissioner Garcia.
Just as Manager Miller mentioned, we've been working this for a little while now, and I guess we just have to some accolades to Pewaukee because thanks to the governor, because if the governor said we're not able to use their transfer station or we're replacing it right now, I think Santa Fe County and the northern part would be in a bit of hurt if the Pewaukee public did not let us utilize their property as a transfer station. But I think the alternatives as to if the Hakona land grant does not want to negotiate with Santa Fe County, with all due respect, Commissioner, maybe we had to go out and look at for BLM land or something, but we definitely need to have a plan A and a plan B and maybe a plan C, but just kind of food for thought. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Garcia. And I think as Manager Miller indicated, we do have a plan B and plan C that staff has looked into already. Thank you.
Any other questions from commissioners so far?
I just have a couple of comments and in regards, Mr. Chair, if I may. Thank you. In regards to the recreational yard for special management, I understand it. I get it. Been there, done that. And I see definitely a need for that. And one of the things I would like to see if staff can actually maybe go outside the box and figure out, instead of sending these individuals out to the rec yard. Is there some other way we can, I don't know, I'm just trying to think outside the box, educate them, do something else other than, here, go to the rec yard, go lift weights or whatever you do in the rec yard. And I just would like to see staff think outside the box once again, as into what other type of engagement that our inmates can have other than going to the rec yard. But just kind of food for thought on that. I was going to mention that earlier. So thank you.
Mr. Chair and Commissioner Garcia, that's a really good point. We do have a lot of programs within the facility. We have tons of volunteers. Obviously right now with the COVID-19, things are limited. How many people can come in and out of the facility and potentially expose staff or inmates to COVID-19, but we have a extensive volunteer program, and they come in and provide all types of classes and opportunities for interaction. But those are predominantly in classroom setting. They can be one-on-one with individuals. It really does depend on each individual inmate as to what their particular condition is as well, as to what type of opportunities we can provide for them. But one thing we want to make sure that we can provide safely is an opportunity to get outside. We're somewhat limited with the design of the facility, as you know. It's just the only outside areas are those areas inside the units where the rec yards are. Other than that, it's very difficult to take individuals out of the facility. And so this is an opportunity to at least be outside in fresh air, but in a secured area. So I think I completely understand what you're requesting, Commissioner Garcia, and I think staff is always looking for opportunities to have meaningful and healthy interaction with the inmates and between inmates.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I guess what I'm just talking about is, those individuals that are incarcerated, they're individuals, and their lives matter as well. And in regards to across the street, I think Governor Martinez wanted to get the prisoners, and we have a horse riding area across the street. Not us, but they do, the state corrections, and they can do gardening, as was mentioned. I'm just thinking outside the box and just kind of maybe getting off a little bit tangent, but thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner Garcia. Those are good points.
Okay, Mr.
Okay, is there
Chair.
any other questions? If there's not any other questions from commissioners, if we could continue, Manager Miller.
Okay, so then we move on to the open space project. And as I said, some of these you can see have some funding, but they have some funding gaps as well. These are actually projects that we have a lot of other funds for. So that's why they jumped to the top of the list, because we've leveraged quite a bit of other funds. The Santa Fe Rail Trailheads, as we've moved forward with our development of the rail trail all the way out through El Dorado and Tuolumne, we need trailheads, parking lots along the way where people can access the trail. And we're looking at doing 2 more trailheads. We had some some state appropriations, but our estimates from our design firm is that we need a little bit more. So we're recommending an increase of $90,000 to the budget, $45,000 of that coming from interest income off of our bond proceeds, and $45,000 from a El Dorado appropriation that went to El Dorado Station 4, which was a land acquisition. We acquired the land, and there was $45,000 left over. We did get the appropriation language changed so it could be used for this purpose. So we're in our request here is to add that additional 45 from bond investment income and the 45 from the state appropriation. On Arroyo Hondo Trail Segment 2 and Arroyo Hondo Trail Segment 3, these go through Rancho Viejo, from the fire station to Richards Avenue, and then from, well, I think it's, actually, I think those are two different, it's one segment, but they're funded as two different federal grants. And so we did them as two separate segments. They're all phase 3, but it's that total section from the fire station all the way to Richards. We received 2 grants from the federal funds, 1.2 million and 1.4 million, but we have a requirement for a county match. In addition, we also need somebody to do our federal certification because they are federal grants. That's a lot of paperwork. So we need $30,000 in there for that. So as you can see, we're recommending $239,000 and $244,000 from capital outlay GRT. Then under project 4, this is capital improvements identified in open space management plans. We've been doing management plans on each open space. You've noticed we've brought those management plans to you over the last couple of years. Each time we finish one, this one is to do Los Potrero, that would be $50,000. And then the also doing an irrigation improvements and repair and restoration on Los Potrero for $105,000, for a total of $155,000 for out of capital outlay GRT for Los Potrero. On roads, our road projects, as you know, we have been working on General Goodwin since 2011, I believe. But we're close to finishing that up. Diego estimates we might need a little bit more than the 3.7 million that we have. We, I think, are in about 90% design, and we are in negotiations to acquire the drainage easement from Mr. Goodwin. If as soon as we get that, we hope to go out to bid on that. But to be safe, we felt like we should request $500,000 in cap from current GO bond proceeds and investment income. So we did $20 million of road bond projects in 4 years ago when we did the bond question, and that money it sat in the bank for a while as we did each project. So we did have some investment proceeds off of that. And we also had some projects that we had a little bit here and there, particularly in Commissioner Garcia's district, had some additional funding. So we're requesting to move that those remaining funds to General Goodwin so we can complete that project. Also, Northeast-Southeast connector. This one, we really hope. We had a 30% design estimate that had it about $2 million over our budget of $9.7 million. The engineers and Diego have worked to take some of the things out of those designs. We're waiting for the 60% design. Unfortunately, the contractor is behind on the 60% design on this project, but we would like to put another 1.2 million to the project, 500 from capital outlay GRT, and then also transfer from the phase 2A road annexation for drainage project with the city on West Alameda to put this to that project so we can, when they finish the design, that we can go out to bid and get it done. We believe that the 1.24 million would be enough. If it's not, we might be back in front of the board for some additional funds, but hopefully not. The contractor was told they need to get that cost down by $1 million to $2 million because they're behind. As you can see, they were the 60% plans were already due. We don't have them. And with that, we would have had a new estimate. And so this one may come back, but for purposes of today, this is what we're requesting right now. On utilities, Canyon Cito water line project.
Mr. Chair, if I may.
Okay, Commissioner Garcia.
On General Goodwin Road, and I know we need to get some acquisition for some ponding areas for the drainage and so on and so forth. We're still working, I think, with the Goodwin family, but what's the status? I don't know if Manager Bill, I don't know if you want to get into the points as to what's the status on the highway department easement that we've been working on for years. And I don't know, I guess maybe I can just bring that stuff up to understanding, but just a little concerned with that because speaking with the highway department, they're ready to go, but you know, it's.
Commissioner Garcia, this is Diego. The NMDOT has reviewed the maintenance agreement. They have agreed to it. It's currently in our legal staff's review. Once our legal department reviews it, we'll get the signatures from the county and from the DOT, and that easement should be taken care of as far as the maintenance easement on New Mexico 14. There's also another easement because the drainage channel goes under the railroad that we're working with the Rail Bureau of the NMDOT. So there's 3 outstanding issues on General Goodwin: the drainage easement, the maintenance easement, and the railroad easement. But we are chipping away on that, and we hope to be under construction here in the spring of 2021. The project is basically designed to 90%, like the county manager said. We're just waiting for the 3 easements to be taken care of and the maintenance agreements. The 1 easement and the 2 maintenance agreements. I apologize, I misspoke.
Thank you for that information. In regards to Camino San Jose, is that drainage agreement easement in the attorney's office as well?
You are correct. That easement agreement is also, and it's not an easement agreement yet. The owners wanted to have a memorandum of understanding signed between us and between the private property owners and the county prior to going into easement negotiations. So that MOU is in the legal department's hands. We're waiting for their comments and hopefully signatures by county management and the private residents.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Thank you, Commissioner Garcia. And back to you, Manager Miller.
Okay, Mr. Chair, the next section is utilities. Canyon Cito El Dorado waterline project. We've awarded the project for the distribution in the Canyon Cito area, but as you know, we need to complete phase 1 and phase 3, which is taking the water line from Rancho Viejo to El Dorado, and then from El Dorado to the community of Canyon Cito. This, I believe, is about, yes, 90% design. The estimate at the moment is around $12 million. We have $9.6 million. So we're requesting that we get the $2.3 million. Predominantly, it's around $2 million from GRT, but we also have some investment earnings. This has been funded from general obligation bonds in 2008, 2012, and 2016. We would have recommended getting that additional funding out of 2020 GO bond, but we actually hope to be under construction before that goes out to the voters for a question. And we didn't want to leave it hanging in limbo. So we wanted to use funding that we currently have in capital outlay GRT to complete that project. I believe the total amount, that 2.3 is from capital outlay GRT.
So Madam Chair, Mr. Chair, I have a question. So once again, Canyon Cito water line the total cost is $12 million. And we have 9.6 million secured. So obviously the funding gap is 2.3 million. And then once again, we're not going to start construction of that project. So we need $2.3 million, correct?
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Garcia, correct.
And so yeah, in the green here, it says $2.8 million from GRT. Am I reading that correct?
Mr. Chair, this one got changed a little bit. There's some investment earnings, primarily that 2.3 is from capital outlay GRT. I think there's a little bit of change from the other GO bonds from 2008, 2012, and 2016. There's some interest, but predominantly it's all capital outlay GRT.
So back down there in the bottom with the $17.3 million, that's the total of all the recommended funding amounts. So do we have that $17.326624 million in capital?
Mr. Chair, if you look, and I could make a breakdown of each funding source, but that 17.3 is everything. And in the column next to the dollar amount, it tells you where it's coming from.
Okay, and then also in regards to the 90% design, we need a water agreement with Eldorado. So we're not going to construct this water line unless we have a water agreement with Eldorado, correct?
Mr. Chair, that is correct, and we are actively negotiating with Eldorado Mutual Domestic on that agreement.
And I don't know if this is the time to ask the question or not, but somebody can tell me yes or no. I'm okay with it. And I'll ask a little bit later, but where is Eldorado with saying yes or no? It seems like we're not moving with them. And so how do we get to move with them? Maybe John can answer that, because it seems like we're just flipping a coin every single day or month with Eldorado. And where are we at with them?
Mr. Chair, I actually think we're making progress. Greg actually could probably give you the latest update, because I know that they had a conversation just last week, and we're getting closer on the deal points. Greg, are you there?
Yes, Mr. Chair, Commissioners, this is Greg Schaefer, Santa Fe County Attorney. We have had at the staff level two, I think, productive negotiating sessions between Santa Fe County and the El Dorado Area Water Sanitation District. Ultimately, it will be for our respective governing bodies, including the Board of County Commissioners, to decide whether to approve any agreement that we negotiate. But I do believe that at the staff level, an agreement is in sight that we could recommend that is mutually beneficial to both parties, both in the short and long run. So I do think we are making progress, though it has long-term implications for both parties. And so I think that both parties are proceeding in a manner that recognizes the cost on both sides, as well as the long-term implications of the relationship.
Thank you. Greg.
Thank you, Commissioner Garcia. I think I'm not sure if the other commissioners are okay with. I think that if we could finish the presentation and then we can ask questions afterwards, or how do you prefer to do that, Manager Miller? Just so we're efficiently moving along.
Mr. Chair, I could go through the rest of them and then stand for questions. We're pretty far along, so.
Okay, so let's do that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So, and I want to stress that part of the reason that we recommend capital outlay GRT or existing cash balances for these projects is these are ones that are really kind of ready to move along. And we didn't want to leave it up to waiting till we had an election and then finding out it didn't pass and we can't move the project forward, particularly one where we have had funding in the last 3 GO bonds to support this project. And we're now at that kind of 11th hour, and we just need to have these last pieces fall together in order to move this project. And that's the agreement and the final amount of funding needed to put that out to bid. Pewaukee Basin Regional Water System, as you know, we have a contributing funds agreement one of the things we've been doing, and we didn't budget it, but, and this will go to Commissioner Garcia, is like, do you have this much capital outlay GRT? We've been setting aside for Pewaukee out of the capital outlay GRT. We have been setting aside money. We just didn't budget it because we had the resolution that said we weren't going to budget anything for the construction until we finished the road agreements. We have approximately currently $5 to $6 million from the sale of the top of the world water rights and land acquisition balance. And then we had been setting aside money in capital outlay, but not budgeting it. So this would actually bring that $5 million that we had set aside over the last 3 or 4 years in fund balance. This would just bring it into the budget. It would mean that we would have about $10 million. We would have about $10 million or 10.1 with this 5 million, 10.1 million out of the 14.4 million in 2018 dollars. Now, I say 14.4, remember everything we do has that escalator. I think it's estimated that by the time we would fully fund this, it'll be 16 something. So we'll be recommending over the next few years adding money from capital outlay GRT to fully fund this project. But this would get us to that $10.1 million mark out of the 14.4 in 2018 dollars. Then vertical projects. When we did the downtown 100 Katrin and 102 grant, we issued revenue bonds. They're not general obligation bonds, they're revenue bonds that are paid off with gross receipts tax that the commission put in place in 2015, I believe, in 2015, in order to fund county facilities, and predominantly the downtown projects and administrative facilities. We issued those bonds, and the primary purpose of those was to finish 100 Katrin and 102 grant. Now that we are pretty close to finishing 102 grant, we still have approximately $4 million remaining in that bond. It's specifically was issued for administrative facilities, and it was also issued with the intent to do the 3-campus model, which was our downtown administrative facilities for all of the offices downtown, our public safety facility out at 14, and our public works facility on 599. The priority was to do the downtown facilities, and then second was public works, and third was to finish out the public safety expansion. It looks like we will be able to, though, take the wash bay that we have out at Public Works and completely do that as offices for our project team and all the Public Works staff that are located at West Alameda, and not use it as a wash bay. It doesn't really work as a wash bay, and we've had difficulty with that. So we would recommend, and sorry I did those in opposite order, is that 1.4 million of that 4 million that we have go to finishing the wash bay at Public Works, into offices for the rest of the project staff so that they can all be located in one facility. And then with the public safety consolidation and renovation, this is an expansion to the sheriff's office, the RECC, and we've gone around and around on this. We're going to do a design build and just expand the existing building. That came back over budget. So then we the last iteration was to just build a separate fire admin on the property, but next to the building, and then renovate the current building where RECC and the sheriffs are into just RECC and sheriffs, and locate the fire department in a separate building. To do that, we still need about $2 million to finish that project. And we also would recommend that that come from the remaining proceeds from the bond that we did for downtown. And then the last amount of it, probably about 600,000, maybe not even quite that much, but we're holding that back because we also need to finish the DA building. We're waiting to hear from the architect whether the amount that we have for the DAs is enough to complete that project. He hadn't looked at it in a while. It had been put on hold because it wasn't considered enough. But we think he's updating the estimates, and hopefully we'll know what we need for the DAs. And that'll be it's one that we currently have is fully funded and we're rolling into 2021. But if it doesn't, if we don't have enough funds, that is where we would tap to finish that, because those are also county administrative offices. Then also we're recommending $2 million additional funding for the Abadan Lopez Senior Center. We have a state grant for $1.3 million. We found out that we will get to keep our $800,000 grant for the Cerrillos Senior Center. So that would mean we could move $800,000 of capital outlay GRT that we had on that project to finish the Abadan Lopez Senior Center project if we moved that $800,000 and took $1.2 million from the capital outlay GRT. And that completes the list of requests for additional funding from the multiple sources that we listed. It's predominantly capital outlay GRT cash balance and FY 2021 estimated revenue, but it's also from the revenue bonds that we already issued and have the proceeds for administrative facilities. There is some funding from general obligation bonds that we've already issued and we have earned interest and have some remaining proceeds. And there was some from fire excise tax cash balances, all for a total of $17.3 million. And that has been built into the budget as a request if you approve this today. The only other item, and we're not asking for a decision on this today, but I just put it on the table because we need to do something, is Mount Chalchuito. We currently have $1.5 million to acquire 2 parcels. It's actually 3 parcels, but the Glockoff property and the Aiken property, as well as do environmental cleanup. And as you know, the environmental cleanup estimate just keeps going up, and there are concerns with contamination in groundwater as well as down the arroyos from the slag piles that have been left on Mount Chow. It was the county's intent to purchase the Aiken property, use it for remediation of those tailings, moving those tailings off of the Glockoff property into the old gravel pit that was on the Aiken property, and then to cap it. But we have not been successful. We have made offers. We have done appraisals, mineral appraisals. We've made offers. We have not been able to come to any kind of agreement with Mr. Aiken for any reasonable price on his property. Additionally, we had a purchase agreement with Glockoff and had conditions in that purchase agreement that needed to be met. And the sellers were unable to meet those conditions, so that purchase agreement expired. We're not saying we should totally give up on this, but we have been sitting on money for this project for probably close to 20 years. And we have been working in, I can't tell you how many iterations we have tried in order to acquire these two properties, and continue to meet with what feels like insurmountable issues. One thing that we would like the board to consider, and like I said, not for today, and that's why it's on here for questions, and it's also in the presentation, not included in a request that we're asking you to approve. It's not included in that $17.3 million, but we did want to make you aware that Thornton Ranch is getting closer to design completion. It's in the same area, and we estimate that we're short by about $1.5 million on that project. And one of the things we could do, if the board so chose, was to move the $1.5 million, maybe leave a little bit in Mount Chow for still continuing some testing work, some remediation work on our Cerrillos Hills property that we own, because that's a problem. You know, it's going downstream, down the arroyos and contaminating our property we already own. But to leave some funding in there to address some cleanup and mitigation on property that we own, as well as some continued studies, but then to move the bulk of that funding to Thornton Ranch so we could move on with construction of making Thornton Ranch accessible to the public portion of it. So I just put that out there for thought. Wanted to let the board know that was something we were considering bringing to you. So I know there's a lot of resistance to that relative to Mount Chow, but the problem is this money is old money and we haven't been able to move it. So with that, I will stop talking and stand for questions.
Okay, so thank you, Manager Miller. Thank you, Manager Miller. I'll start going to commissioners. Commissioner Garcia, you'd like to go first?
Actually, I'll go last.
Okay, last it is. Commissioner Hamilton. Commissioner Hamilton, did you have any comments?
Yes, I'm sorry. I had turned my microphone off and forgot to turn both on.
No worries.
Can you have my apologies? First of all, just in general, this list looks really good. It's well thought out, and there are a lot of things here. Not to go line by line, there are a lot of things here that we need to complete, that are very important, that we have had trouble getting to, and I think it's amazing that with as difficult as some things, as challenging as budgeting is right now, that we can pull this number of projects out, I think is very commendable. One thing, at one point, I thought we had also some consideration of the long-term water planning, something that's the 40-year planning being considered in conjunction with the city. I don't think that's a big amount of funding. I'm not even sure was that whether, but it was in the capital list at one point. Is that not true?
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Hamilton, you are not seeing things. It was on a version of potential bond projects, but I don't think that that's something that we can fund with general obligation bonds because it has to be capitalized. But what I spoke to John Dupuy, he has some savings on a different project of about 100,000, and we think that we could, if the city comes up with some funding for their portion of it, that would be an area we could start. So we didn't completely wipe it out. We think that I also I'm not even sure I can use capital outlay. I think we'll have to use some, because of it being a plan. And
Right.
if you can't capitalize it, you can't use capital outlay GRT, and you can't use general obligation bonds. So we were looking at, he thinks he'll have some of his utilities funding left over on another project that we could, about 100,000, that would get us started.
Excellent. I appreciate it. It's nice to know that I wasn't missing the boat, and yet what you're saying about it not belonging in capital actually makes sense. So if we're not dropping that from consideration, to have some ongoing discussion, in the commission, that would be great. And I don't know if you're looking, Mr. Manager Miller and Mr. Chair, for comments on the last two questions.
Yeah,
But
absolutely. If you have those questions, go ahead.
well, there are a couple of comments. One is, I have tremendous concerns about as obviously, you do, Manager Miller, you've been tracking this really closely, about the environmental remediation, because it's a really important thing to do, and it's also a black hole. And so when I couple that with knowing that we have not been able to move on this for so long, the idea of moving the money to another project that has also been languishing because of, a little bit of funding over multiple years, so the project's not finished, to consider moving it to Thornton Ranch without necessarily giving up on the Mount Chach issue, I think holds some potential merit, and I would like to see us have more discussion on that. So I think I'll leave it at that. I think it's worth discussing. So thank you, Mr. Chair.
I don't know if we lost the chair.
No, I'm here.
Mr. Chair,
Yeah.
Was that
Commissioner Hampson here, Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Hanson? Go ahead.
Thank you very much. I think this is a really a good list of many, many projects that need attention. As you well know, at least the commission knows, I do support the Northeast Connector. I just worry about taking money from District 2 to put into District 5. And so but I know that in the future, if the city ever can get it together to do West Alameda, which I do consider an important road, also that needs a serious attention. So I don't want that to get lost. A lot of my constituents continually complain about West Alameda, and I send them to the city. But when I'm concerned, so I think there's a good overall project. I have not seen the continuation of the Agua Frio sewer project. I've only seen on the other pages the completion of with the 1.2 million that we have. So I don't know if that's going to take us through 2022. But I haven't seen it on any of the other lists, even the unfunded list. So I'm wondering if it belongs here to be something to be considered under utilities. And since
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Hanson, I could address that for you if you'd like.
Okay.
So that project, and by the time we have our next BCC meeting, I wanted to have a list of, and this is so difficult because I'm trying to show you the big picture, but I have to do it in different buckets and different timeframes. If we, one of the things that we were going to do if COVID-19 had not happened is I would have been bringing forward to you a list of $40 million worth of projects for 2020 bond questions, not 20 million. And in my next presentation, you'll see that. And what I have worked with our financial advisor is, what if we did 20 million now and 20 million of questions in 2022? What would that do to our bond rating? And would it be more palatable for getting public support? Our typical way of doing our bonds is we go out every 4 years, but our goal is to always have a steady debt service on our property tax so that it doesn't spike up or down. And what we go out for questions with is to keep a certain debt service. And I'll show it to you in the next presentation. But the point is that if we have a drop in property values due to COVID-19, if we went out with $40 million right now, we would have an increase in our property tax rate. If we do 20 million and we have a drop, we then have the opportunity in 2 years to say, well, do we want to ask for maybe only 10 million or something less? Or is it okay? Is the environment better? We see that property values popped back up. So, but what we typically would do was go to the voters for 40 million, and we wouldn't issue all 40 million right after the election. We don't sell those bonds right away. It's authorization that stays in place for 4 or 5 years. And so we do about half the year after the election, and about 2 years later, we do the other half. Or we might even spread it out over 5 years and 3 different issues. What we're recommending is just doing 20. One, because right now I'm not really sure how the voters feel about voting for bonds with the economy the way that it is. And so we don't want to push that tolerance. We've always had strong support for our bond questions, particularly water, wastewater, and open space. I mean, they've passed 65%, 72%, and higher. So I'm hoping that by scaling it back to 20 million right now and waiting and doing a question in 2022 for another 20 million, our constituents will support that because they'll see that we're being responsive to the current economic environment, and we're being responsible with getting our projects done and keeping people employed in the construction world, as well as stimulating the economy and keeping things moving. If we go out with 40 million, I couldn't issue all that right away anyway, nor would your project in particular be ready for several years for additional funding. So the thought was that would be a good question for 2022. That would be a good project to keep in the 2022 question. And the reasoning is that right now we currently have about 1.9 million, almost 2 million built into the FY 2021 budget for that. And we only have design for 7 streets with an estimated cost of 1.26 million. Out of those 7 streets, we only have 3 that we could actually move forward on. We have turnaround issues. The city, as you know, we're going to build the sewer, but then it's going to be turned over to the city. The city's requirements are that they can get down those streets and turn around. We're going to need to we can't. There's no room on some of them. So we need to negotiate a different turnaround process for their staff and know that they would accept that in the design. And we still have 4 streets just out of the project that we currently have that we need to complete the design and agreement with the city that it's okay to move forward. So, and still to acquire easements, I think on 4 of those out of the 7. So we're not ready to move forward in construction with what we currently have funding for, and probably won't be spending all of that for another 2 to 3 years anyway. So that was why, rather than put more money in the bank and sit on it, we really have to get those state appropriations spent, and we want to focus on getting that phase done, and then design the next phase, and then add the money for the construction of that phase is when we have the design of it done, which we would hope would be 2022. But as you know, acquiring easements, negotiating these things with other governmental entities is difficult. And so it might even not be ready till the 2024 bond question. But that's the reality of that project. And it's, you know, it's the same as like Canyoncito. I think the first bond that was in was 2008, and we're still pumping money into it to get it done.
Yeah, so that's what that's how I see it also. I just want to also mention, though, that on roads in my district, there are a number of roads that do need attention. Kai Del Ora Grant Road, and I don't know if that's still in later. Fenda del Sendero could use some attention. I just feel like District 2 is not very well represented at the moment. As far as Mount Chow goes, this is a very difficult situation because we all recognize how important this landmark and historic mind is, but at the same time, I am well aware of how expensive cleanup and remediation is from all of the work that I have done with Lanel on the cleanup of Los Alamos and of legacy waste. And not that this is legacy waste, but it's still toxic waste. And cleanup is incredibly, incredibly expensive. I am wondering, has Mount Chow ever been designated a Superfund site? Because it seems to me that we need way more money than the county has to clean up this area. I don't know how that would work. I don't know what kind of money we could get from NMED and how much they would participate in oversight and cleanup of this area, which I think is definitely necessary. But to burden this all on the county is not proper, since the county didn't make the mess. And of course, it's too late to have the people who did make the mess clean it up. We're still up in Los Alamos, still trying to get the labs to pay for cleanup. So I recognize how expensive cleanup is, and it's necessary. It's necessary for the park down below. It's also, Thornton Ranch is incredibly beautiful. I would like to see that be made available to the public. I think that that would be a great gift to the citizens of Santa Fe County. It is a beautiful place for people to experience. They can actually see Mount Chow from Thornton Ranch. They can't visit it, but I mean, at the moment, until there's this huge amount of money that's required for cleanup, I don't see how we can do that. I think I recognize all of the constituents who care deeply about this project and care deeply about the Cerrillos Park, the Cerrillos Park, and access to that. But we need, I think, federal money, state money, to really undertake this, and the fact that we have not been able to, over years and years and years and years of negotiating a fair and reasonable price with the landowners, it puts us even in a more difficult position. We do own the Mount Chow property, and I think that that is a great thing. And I hope that we can, at some point, find a way to get money for cleanup and actually negotiate with these people. But in the meantime, if we can't, I think it would be a great gift to the citizens of Santa Fe County to be able to access Thornton Ranch. So with that, I'll leave. Those are my comments for the moment. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner Hanson. And I did see Commissioner Hamilton with her hands up. I did have a quick follow-up question for staff, I think. And I know Commissioner Hanson had mentioned that that there wasn't as many road projects in her district. And I know that I've asked a question before in the past to staff, and I believe that they go by how many county roads are in each district. And of course, some districts have a lot more county roads than other districts. So I think that's kind of how they base the projects on the different areas, just based off of how many county roads we actually own in the districts. But I don't know if there's anybody from staff, either Diego or Gary, that could maybe clarify that, because I know that sometimes it may appear that way, but I think it's because of the amount of county roads that we have in each district.
Mr. Chair, first of all, District 1 and District 3 have the most county road miles. We don't make recommendations on projects based upon evenly splitting money. It's impossible. It's impossible to evenly split up the capital projects each year by the same amount in each district. You have a road like Northeast-Southeast Connector. You're going to have that in our growth area. That's going to be in District 5 because that's our growth area. You're also going to have District 3 exceeds I think District 3 alone has more road miles than all the other 4 combined. I'm probably wrong, but it's a lot more. So this is always a challenge. The recommendations out of Public Works relative to the projects that are on this list go to, first of all, on this list, roads that are ready or projects that already had money to them. I can't add new ones if I can't finish the ones that we already have funding for. That's first and foremost. Can we please finish what we've already allocated funding for? Then secondly, it goes to, so one year, what you might find, like the river trail, there's nothing like that in District 4. So open space, when we do the river trail, if we added all that up, you'd have way more in open space and trails in District 2 than you would in District 4, because rail trail just slightly skirts through District 4. It's predominantly in District 5. And we really don't have much in the way of open space projects in District 4. We also don't have community centers in District 4. We don't have, we have one senior center that's shared with District 4 and District 5 in El Dorado. But we don't have a roping arena in District 1. So you have to understand that allocating funding by district is almost impossible, because it would be ridiculous for us to have the exact same amount in each district. The focus is on what projects are needed in this particular list, is what have we already funded that needs additional funding in order to complete it. The next list is about roads, water, wastewater, open space. Logically, what's the next project? And can we spend the money quickly? To make a project just to have it all spread out evenly doesn't make sense because the next bond issue in 2022 or 2024 will be lopsided to another district. That's just the way it goes. You have to kind of look over 10 years, 20 years. Does it spread out that we've invested in infrastructure and projects throughout the county? And I think we do. I think we do a really good job of that, trying to focus on something for every district at the time that that district is ready for it. And from a staff perspective, they don't necessarily sit here and look at it from a district perspective. They're looking at it from what's the greatest need next. So what road is in the worst condition and really needs addressing because it's a public safety hazard from a flooding perspective, or it's just completely falling apart. Yes, we take into consideration your requests. The Lopez Lane sidewalk, that wasn't even on a radar screen 2 years ago. So that's a project that has completely come in from a commission request. It is not one that came from a staff, let's bring it up because it's seen as a asset that we have that's falling apart and needs replacing, or it's a flooding issue. So all of it is, it's an art, not a science, to put this list together for you. We do the best we can at trying to make it equitable across districts, but it also is driven by growth area. Those roads are going to be way more expensive because they're a much bigger piece of infrastructure in our growth area in the community college district than a little country road south of El Dorado or possibly up in District 1. We will do what we can to try to adjust based upon your priorities, but it's impossible for us to get every project that each one of you want every year. It's not possible. So I say that because you'll see that we have tried to hit every district with something that we know we can move forward in the next couple of years.
Thank you for that clarification, Manager Miller. And I know that staff does a great job doing this. I mean, I think all of the commissioners know that, you know, there's a great need and many wants and needs in the communities. And I think that, you know, staff does a great job making a determination on where, which projects will give us the biggest bang for our buck, and making sure that we actually, you know, have a method that we're using to you know, serve our constituents. And I know that, you know, sometimes it may appear that there's not projects, that there's not as many projects in one district as another, but I think that, you know, staff does a great job identifying where the bigger needs are and things of that nature. And it's not an easy job, like you say. You know, it's something that they have to, you know, put together, and that you as a county manager looks at and works on that. So I do appreciate the hard work, and I appreciate the explanation, because it's good to put that on the record for our constituents, for their edification as well, and so that they can understand the situation that the county faces. So thank you for doing that. Okay, I was going to go to Commissioner Hamilton, and then I'll come back to you, Commissioner Hanson. Commissioner Hamilton.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So first of all, I think I really appreciate the approach that Manager Miller just expressed. I think it has served us well. It balances across districts based on some real need. And it does, we do have to look, I agree completely, at averaging over time, where you're balancing immediate needs. And I think in this case, one of the important points is this list represents things that have, the projects that have other funding that are partly underway, that could be completed with this additional funding, which to me is the exact correct focus for at this particular time. When I raised my hand, it was to add a thought to Commissioner Hansen's comment about Mount Chow, the idea that perhaps it should be a Superfund site. That is probably something that is truly worth pursuing. That might be something the state needs to pursue federally, because when something gets designated as a Superfund site, it brings federal dollars. It makes those available for cleanup. And the reason, part of the rationale for that is that it's not typically, those things are typically so expensive that it's not something that a local government can afford on its own when quote unquote responsible parties are no longer in existence or available. There's no private deep pocket to go after. And so that's probably a really, really good idea. Having said that, I think it also emphasizes the converse, which is that we have to have more discussion about the potential of making further acquisitions with respect to this site, if it qualifies as a Superfund site, because as soon as you buy it, you break it, you buy it. It's the reverse of that. We buy it, we're responsible for it. And to be able to afford to do a remediation that contributing to it, the county is trying to be responsible and has done some stuff that is really commendable, and we should keep after it. But to become to take on that responsibility at this point, when there's probably a more rational approach, which would be federal funding to do this cleanup through Superfund, I think we really need to think about this. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner Hamilton. And I'm going to go to all the rest of the commissioners so that, I don't keep anybody waiting, but I'm going to go to Commissioner Moreno. Did you have a comment, sir, or question?
Mr. Chair. I'm in accord with the Mount Chow. This is the issue. Is it what is the situation in that area? I'm not sure how dangerous is it now? Is it leaking? Is there danger for runoff? I think an assessment of that situation would be a good start if we're wanting to do something. And then with an assessment, the risk and the money obviously would be a factor. But I'd like to see something like how dangerous is it? That's one. That's one. We have 5 commissioners, and with 5 people, nobody's going to get everything there that you want. And in my 4 years on this board, I think we have been collegial. We have been mindful of how much money is enough and when we back off when we don't have the money. And so you know, with good minds, with uh, minds with the project, we can always figure it out. I don't have any compunction to rely on my colleagues to work with everybody to come up with the best available solution for any problem. So that's my overall take on this situation and this discussion.
Thank you, Commissioner Moreno. Well said, sir. We appreciate your comments. Commissioner Garcia?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Let's see, where do I start? In regards to the bond, I know we're going to be going forward for a bond here before we know it, because time is just flying by, right? As we all know that. I think the vote, as Manager Miller mentioned, the voters of Santa Fe County, city and county, have actually been very generous to our bonds in the past years. For those that have been there for a while, look at the Santa Fe Public Schools. We actually passed a bond during a hard time, and we actually explained to the voter what we were going to do with our tech bond. And actually, we did that during we actually did the entire tech. 97% of every student in the district had a laptop because the voters voted for that bond that the schools actually proved that we were going to get done. And so as we've done and as we need to do better, I feel, is whenever we do go out for a bond, we need to guarantee the taxpayers what projects we're going out there for. And that's what we're doing with this great list that we're going through, and very well vetted out. And as we move forward in the next 4 more months, 120 days of what we're going to put that bond question out, and depending on what the county commission votes on, whether it's 20 probably or the 40, as Manager Miller will guide us through that, because she has excellent experience and does a great job in how we get through the bonding process. Mount Chow, as we all know, and we all need to consider, I was on the list in 2012 that the voters voted for to get done. Why it's taken a little while? Good question. I know in the past we actually have had staff working on Mount Chow, and everybody that maybe I may just sneaking a little bit into this, but everybody's assuming it's dirty. Everybody's assuming. I actually, as a commissioner from that district, I want to sit down and go through those files and say what is happening there, because every different staff is assuming this. We're assuming this. We're going to do this. We're going to clean it up. Let's do a super fund. I get it. I understand that, but as that being part of my district, I want to sit down with staff. That staff has since then left. She's actually willing to talk with us if we have any questions. I know in the past 8 years, we had a different governor's administration who probably we couldn't get a definite answer out of that department, but maybe now we can. So I understand the whole issue with Mount Chow. So I appreciate Manager Miller keeping it on the list, and I guess I need to go sit down there with my constituents and say, here's the evidence that we have so far. I understand the overappraisal on Aiken's property. So maybe we could just go one more time and say, here you go, here's what it is. And no, he's not going to go down. Then we got to get out. We got to move. If we can't sit there for another 20 years with that money sitting there, I understand that, Mount Chow. Possibly Thornton Ranch. I guess I'm a little confused with Thornton Ranch. Not confused. I get it. I understand the whole thing. But when Tony was here, we were ready to open it. We had a 90-day opportunity to open that Thornton Ranch, and the last few things we had to do was we would meet with the Native Americans, and it was going to be open. We had a plan. Now it's another $10 more million. Where did that come from? I don't know. I get a little challenged, I guess. I'm just kind of venting a bit, but Just another couple things. Our public safety facility. I know there's a move nationwide to defund police departments throughout the nation. Maybe if they can explain to me in detail what defunding means or a different way or route, maybe I can understand, but I don't see how we're going to defund our sheriff's department. And so we need to move forward on the public safety building as we're trying, we're doing it. The RECC, I see sometimes when I can't sleep, sometimes I actually look at, what's it called? Live PD, cops. You have these guys that sit in a control room, or women. They're going from Tulsa, Oklahoma, let's go to Illinois, let's do this on these nice, beautiful, big screen facility room. And I'm like, I just hopefully wish that our RECC someday could have those great big computer screens, kind of like that one right there. Really nice. And so that's what I just hope we just move forward, because we're going to be asking for another bond, and we have some of these projects that have been on the bond still. And I understand we've had some challenges in the past that we've worked with Manager Miller, and we're getting that our departments, the ball rolling again, the machine going. And I just want to caution Mountain Child, Commissioner Hamilton, you have the expertise in EPA stuff, and maybe we can sit down and talk about what we can or cannot do, or what we should or shouldn't do. And just kind of voicing my opinion here. But I get it. Great list. It's very detailed. I appreciate that. Every single fund, almost every single project here is underfunded. One of the other concerns I have, Manager Miller, as you had mentioned in regards for the DA's office, we're actually waiting for the architect to come in with the new budget. And with all due respect to the architects out there, I just feel that maybe we should hold their hands or their feet to the fire. We want you to design a $10 million facility. You're stopping at 10. As we know, as we dealt with the new complex, the $29 million administration building and the old courthouse, $29 million on time, within budget, thanks to the staff. We're doing that, and the manager, obviously. And so those are the comments I have, Mr. Chair. But once again, thank you, staff, the Manager Miller. I know it's Santa Fe County. Whenever you go to state legislature, we have a lot of stuff going on, tons of stuff going on. And we're not like these other smaller counties, but I know we have a lot of stuff going on. Roads, every single road in every single district needs maintenance. No matter even if they just paved it 4 years ago. As Diego knows, that road will need maintenance every 4 years. You got to chip seal, you got to fog coat, you got to do all that stuff that's required, as the highway department does on 599 every 2 years, 3 years, right? So it's just a matter of time as to how we get there. I know Manager Miller's putting her team together, and we just got to have a little bit of patience, and we'll move forward. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner Garcia.
Mr. Chair,
Hanson, if there's or Manager Miller, go ahead and address some of Commissioner Garcia's concerns.
Sure. So I think one of the issues with Mount Chow, what makes Mount Chow so difficult is it really is, counties aren't responsible for remediation of old mine sites. That's a state requirement. And I think that when the state realized the county was willing to buy this, it was like, okay, we don't have to do anything here. They just, yeah, exactly, Commissioner Hamilton. Okay, now it's the county's problem. It's not our problem. And so we're not getting any help from the entity that's really responsible for enforcing cleanup of that property. And unfortunately, what's happening, and this is to Commissioner Moreno's comments, we have done some studies of what is happening, and we're going to get a report, I hope. But yeah, some of those piles of tailings, yes, it's draining into the arroyo, and it's moving on down to our Cerrillos Hills property that we own. And, frankly, somebody else should be cleaning that up, not us. We shouldn't be taking on, if it's a Superfund site, I mean, think about it. Do we really want to purchase a Superfund site? I don't know what the bottom of the pit is relative to cleaning that site up. But what I can tell you is it's not because we haven't tried to acquire those properties. As I said, staff has been working on it. Staff has tried every which way. We have had actual purchase agreements in place that had conditions for the seller to meet. They didn't meet them. We've made offers, frankly, above what I think the property is worth for the Aiken property. They've been rejected. The budget we have in no way is sufficient to purchase both properties and clean that property up. But we're not getting anywhere with Mr. Aiken in the purchase of the land. He wants too much for it, and and there's issues with the actual property that has the mine. So, but what we do know is we want to protect the property we already own, and that's Cerritos Hills. And so we should focus on making sure we have some kind of cleanup in the arroyos where that that contamination is draining to. I don't know what the ultimate answer is with Mount Chow, but we certainly can't do it on our own. And I don't know if there's a way to really push the state to help us, the federal government, but I don't think it's something that just continuing to throw general obligation bond money at, I still don't think we're going to get where we need to be. And I also don't know what the Board of County Commissioners is willing to do relative to acquiring the Aiken property. Because the only way that we can get access to it as well is through the Aiken property. The cleanup we had planned is on the Aiken property. So if the board wants us to throw away what we've been working on and try some other complete different approach, we could try that, but I can tell you we've tried just about every approach I can think of relative to acquiring the Aiken property, and we have been, and that is the access to the property, to the Glockoff property where the mine is. So, or the mines are, and the tailing piles are. So, this is obviously a discussion, I think, for executive session relative to property acquisition. But I just want it to be known. It's not a matter of we haven't been trying. We've been trying for 20 years. And I will be happy to sit down with Commissioner Garcia in particular and give you the list of every iteration we have tried. I think that would be helpful. I think we could also present that to the community so that they understand. And I think a lot of the community members do know. It's not a matter of we haven't communicated a lot of our problems, but because it's been over such a long time frame, memories are short, and maybe one big long list of everything that we've done over the years would be helpful. And I know that Colleen isn't with the county anymore, but I think she'd be willing to help us put that list together. If we put something together, she'd probably be willing to take a look at it and say, yeah, you missed this or that, or and so we could do that. And I think that's something that would be really useful for Commissioner Garcia, for the community, and for the board as a whole. So we'll do that on Mount Chow. Relative to Thornton Ranch, we have never been ready to open Thornton Ranch. I think what, Commissioner Garcia, what you might be thinking of is we had to do the management plan, and that required us to collaborate with 160 some tribes. And so we spent a great deal of time collaborating with all the tribal entities in order to finish the management plan. Once we had the management plan approved by the board, then we went into designing, and that's where we are right now, is in design of a part of, and Thornton Ranch is hundreds of acres. And we're not even anywhere close to being able to access on a regular basis the petroglyphs. What we have done, and what we did do, is we did individual tours. We had people sign up for tours of, and so we did do some tours of the petroglyphs. But what we're talking about is below the petroglyphs, some of the opening up an area for access and building some trails for people to ride horses on, or mountain bike, or hike on, and having access there. And that's the project that we put some money to. It's not completely designed yet. We do know they need to scale back some of the stuff. But one of the things that the board really pushed us over the last 10 years is make some of these open space properties accessible to the public, that we didn't buy them just to preserve them. We bought them also to have some public access. And that's something we'd like to try to do. We heard that loud and clear several years ago from the former board of county commissioners. And that's what we've been trying to do. So that was the reason for that potential reallocation of funding, was to try to accomplish that on Thornton Ranch. And as I said, not asking for that today. What we are asking for today is approval of the project, the funding allocations above the line on that spreadsheet.
Okay, thank you for the clarification, Manager Miller. I know I did see Commissioner Hanson earlier had her hand up, and so did Commissioner Hamilton. So I'm going to go back to Commissioner Hanson. If we could kind of keep our comments as brief as possible. I know that we've been on this subject for a while, unless it's something that's really important for the board to hear.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I know we've been on this one topic and we haven't even made it to the bond recommendations, but do you want a motion now, Manager Miller?
Mr. Chair, that's great if you're willing to vote on this now. If you want to wait till after the bond one, but I would like a motion before we, a decision.
Okay, so I'm willing to make a motion to approve the CIP recommendation on bond, non-bond capital FYI 21.
Okay, so we have a motion from Commissioner Hanson, and I believe I saw possibly a second from Commissioner Hamilton, but you're on mute.
Am I off mute now?
Yes, you are.
Okay, yes, I seconded that.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second under discussion. Is there any other discussion from the board? Okay, hearing none, we're going to go to a roll call vote. So I'm going to go to Commissioner Hanson.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Hanson. Commissioner Hamilton?
Yes.
I believe you're on mute, Commissioner Hamilton.
I saw it go off mute. I thought I did. Yes.
Thank you, Commissioner Hamilton. Commissioner Moreno?
Yes.
Thank you, Commissioner Moreno. Commissioner Garcia?
Yes.
And a yes from Commissioner Roybal, so it is approved unanimously. Thank you, Manager Miller, again, and we can move on to our next item.
Thank you. I think, Daniel, can you bring up that presentation from RBC? And then we'll go to the spreadsheet after this. I'm going to try to do this pretty quickly. It's a PowerPoint.
Daniel, it's the item, if I could, Mr. Chair, relative to geo bond projects, and it is the financial plan or finance plan update is its document title.
Could you tell me which item number it is, Greg? I apologize.
I know, and I don't have Board Docs on my screen, or I'd do it.
We got it. We got it as a PDF, Geo Bond Finance Plan Update.
Okay. Barbara, I apologize. Barbara, would you be able to pull it up? I'm having some issues with my computer right now.
I actually don't have that one.
Oh, okay.
Sorry.
Let's see.
About you, Greg, can you? Because I don't have,
I should be able to do so. Just bear with me 1 second.
okay, because I don't have it on, I have it on a different computer. I don't have it on this one. Actually died on me.
Okay, I think I have it. Let's see, is this it here, Manager Miller?
Nope.
Hmm.
It's a, no. No.
Huh.
It should be on the, Greg, were you able to put it on the Word doc? Okay, that's it. Sorry, Daniel. I'll have to rely on Greg to move us through it. So, so at the beginning of June, I had a meeting with our financial advisor, and I apologize. I would have him at this meeting. He was going to be available for the study session last week, and as you know, I was out, so I didn't get with him to reschedule him for this week. But the basic gist of it, what I asked him to do is show us what is happening with our property values, show us what our debt service looks like, and show us what would have, like how much to keep our current debt service rate, how much would we be able to issue in general obligation bonds. We started that discussion well before the COVID-19. And based on the historical values of our property, you can see that we've been steadily increasing. Our assessor and his staff have been doing our valuation, and you can see the last 5 years percent change year over year in our assessed value. This past year, for 2019, our assessed value actually jumped by 5%. So that gives you a pretty good increase in property value to spread the debt service over. So I was pretty surprised when he came back and said that he thought we would be able to issue $40 million worth of general obligation bonds, or ask the voters, I should say, for $40 million of authorization and issue $40 million over the next 4 years in bonds without changing our debt service rate. And that's the highest. Typically, we're in the $20 to $30 million range, but because our valuation over the last 5 years has gone up about $1 billion, that's a lot more value to spread that debt over. If you go to the next one, Greg. So you can see that this is just Santa Fe County's rates. We don't control any of the state debt service or the cities or the school districts. They're all individual. But when you look at your property tax bill, when you see county operational and county debt service, these are the rates that we have across the board. Our operational, we have all 11.85 mills in place, but due to such high values of property, it actually only comes out to 5.799 on a residential operational rate, or so that's $5 80 cents per thousand taxable value. And our debt service is 212. Now it went up in 2017 from 197 to 212 because the commission at that time conscientiously made the decision to put an extra question on the ballot, and that was the $5 million for health facilities, which covered the Edgewood House, $3 million to the Edgewood Health Facility and $2 million to the $2 million to the behavioral health facility. So that jump that you see between 2016 and 2017 was a conscientious decision by the board to put an additional question. We would have had just $30 million worth of questions to keep that 197 rate. 197 to 198 is what it had been around for 5 years. But they actually consciously put the additional question for $5 million, and the voters resoundingly voted yes for that. We put out to the public, it would, if you vote for all 4 questions, that's a roads, water, wastewater, open space, and health facilities, would raise your property taxes by about 15 cents per thousand. And they voted yes. So that's why you see that increase there. But we built the debt service to try to keep it around 212. And in order to do that going forward, Greg, next slide. With the outstanding debt that we have, this is all the general obligation bonds that we currently have outstanding. Most of it is not, there's a little bit that's callable, but not a lot in the ability to call it right now and refinance it now. But our total amount outstanding is about 120 million. You can see, yeah, we can't call anything. Sorry, go back one. We can't call anything till July 2021. You can see that in the, so where we have our series 2011, we have $6 million of that, 6.7 still outstanding. 4.7 is callable, but not until next year. And then the next one after that is until 2022. This is the actual debt service schedule. It shows you every one of our bonds, what we pay, and this will be relevant when you see the budget presentation later. In our total budget, we have all of this debt service, our total debt service and general obligation due on October 30th, 2020. It's going to be 14.9 million almost. And that just gives you an idea of what we currently have outstanding and the schedule for payment of it. Next one. So this gives you what we've done in the past. The last time we went to the voters was in 2016. As I said, we did 35 million. We were going to only do 30 million in order to keep that 197, 198 rate, but we added the $5 million for the 2 health facilities. That made our current debt service tax rate 2.12 mils. Out of that, as I said, we don't always sell all 35 million right away. What we did, so the voters approved it in November of 2016, 35 million. So we sold 22 million of that in the beginning of 2017, and then we sold the remainder in 2018. So that puts us, and then you saw in that list of all of our current projects that are fully funded or partially funded, quite a few of them are in that 2016 bond issue. So that means right now our next election that is scheduled, and we usually go every 4 years. So this would be a departure if we go 2 years, but I'll give you a little info on that. But our next GEO bond election would be scheduled for November 2020. And we could have an election for up to $40 million to be sold over the next 4 years. That would maintain our historical rate of 212. The next election, and this is if we assume a 3% growth in assessed values. So on that first slide that I showed you, you can see that we probably averaged about 3%, but it's not 3% per year. It was like 1.7, 2, 5. So, but we do an average growth of 3% per year in our projections in order to try to maintain that 2.12. If we did 40 million now, and we continue to have increases of 3% per year for the next 4 years, then in 2024, you could likely have another 40 or 44 million. That would maintain the 2.12 mils. But that, as I said, assumes a 3% growth in assessed value. If assessed value exceeds the 3%, in 2024, you'd be able to do more than 40 million and still maintain that 2.12. But if the future average growth is below 3%, then our capacity would be lower in order to maintain the 2.12. It has been our policy for probably close to 20 years to try to maintain a steady debt service rate. It used to be we didn't have a plan, we didn't issue debt with any particular type of policy in mind, and our rate would jump up and down based upon values and based upon the questions. But we have consistently, I'll say 18 years, that we have consistently targeted having this flat rate, and if we've decided to do something different, it was conscientious and taken to the voters with that information provided. So this just gives you what our total bonding capacity is. This is set in statute. Actually, it might even be partially constitutional, but we're allowed to have 4% of assessed value, which is $284 million. If you take our value today, $7.5 billion in residential and non-residential, and that gives us 4% is 285 million of debt. As you saw, we have outstanding debt of 119 or almost 120, which gives us a remaining capacity of 166 million. And what we try to do is keep that debt service rate. And most of our bonds, we typically pay them off 10 to 20 years. Our debt service repayment has been anywhere from 10 to 20 years. We have not gone out any longer than 20 years. So this is the information that drives, or this is the data that drives what I put forward to you on how do we size our bond question. So next slide. So I asked, and I don't know if you can blow that up a little bit, Greg. So as I said, you could, if you wanted, as a board, make the decision to go out for 40 million in November. I personally think that the voters will be a little gun shy to large questions like 20 million for roads, 10 million for open space, and 10 million for water and wastewater. Additionally, we don't have the staff capacity, as we started this whole conversation this morning, to do all $40 million in the next couple years anyway. So maybe right now, where voter sentiment may not be as supportive of a large, even though taxes, all things stay the same, taxes wouldn't go up, they just may not be as supportive. So I asked the financial advisor, give me a scenario if property values, if we did go out with $40 million and property values went down next year or the year after, what would happen? So what he did is he said, if you go out with $40 million and we have our 3% growth average every year, nothing changes, we would stay at 2.124. And that's based on 3% growth. And he gives you in this table, you can see it's 2.14 right now, 2.124 right now. And the expected rate, if you went with 40 million in 2020 and 40 million in 2024, it would stay 2.124. But you see, it'd have to continue to have assessed values grow at 3% per year. So we'd go from $7.5 billion to 8.465 in 2023. If we have a blip because of the economy and COVID-19 and possibly drop in commercial values because businesses go out of business, anything like that, and we don't see that, we wouldn't see that necessarily in 2021 valuation. We probably still might even see an increase in 2020 valuation, I mean, this year. But next year, if we saw a 3% decrease, just 1 year, a 3% decrease, and then a 0% growth in 2022, and then we come back to our average 3%, you can see that what that would do is increase from 2.12 to 2.34 by the time we hit, and so you just to do what we typically, what we would have planned to issue would create an increase for the taxpayer. If you look at scenario 3, and we did 20 million in 2020, and we had our growth in 2021, but we had a downturn in 2022 and no increase in 2023, and then start to grow again, you would have 20 million in 2020 and 35 million in 2024 without any increase. So what I asked him, and I don't have the scenario for you, but he said, essentially what you could do is 20 million in 2020. And when we get to 2022, see what happened with property values, see what's happening with the economy. If at that point we didn't have a major dip in valuation, you could do 20 million in 2022 and still maintain the 2.124 and then still have capacity for 40 million in 2024. So what my recommendation was, and why we put forward to you 20 million, was it's a conservative approach to say, hey, let's not push it with the voters, and then let's see what happens with the economy, with property values over the next 2 years, and decide in 2022 if we want to go out with another bond question. I also asked or questions, I should say, and size it at that time, if you decide to do it, size it to a size that keeps the tax the same. I asked him, are there lots of entities, counties, cities, municipalities that do questions every 2 years? And he said, yeah, it's not uncommon. Sandoval County does their bond questions every 2 years instead of every 4. Makes it a little more flexible for them. And he says they have not had any problem having their bond elections approved by the voters. And so there are other counties, and that was the one that does it. It's most similarly sized to us on a regular basis that way. Others do it like we do every 4 years. There is some advantage. The state does their bond questions every 4 years. We're on the same schedule as them. That means that ballot is pretty long with questions for bonds. This would actually have some of our questions on the off years to the state questions. We're the last ones on the ballot, just so you know, when it comes to, and I say we're the last ones on the ballot, but I haven't seen one since we did all these consolidated elections either. So I have no idea how long that ballot's going to be with questions to the voters for any city GO bond, any school district GO bond. But So that's something also we need to make sure we know. So that's why the recommendation is what it is 20 million this November, and take a wait and see for November 2022. So with that, I stand for questions about this financial plan.
Okay, thank you, Manager Miller. I'm going to go through the board for questions. Commissioner Moreno, did you have questions, sir?
I don't think I have much to ordinary this I think the manager put a good a good thing to think on. I'm not sure where I would go. Ordinarily I'm a middle of the road, which would be the scenario 2, but I'd like to hear others' ideas.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Moreno. Commissioner Hanson?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Manager Miller. I appreciate the overview. I think that in this situation that we're in with the COVID-19, I think it is a wise and prudent way to bond and go for 20 million this year, maybe and 20 million in 2022. I think that it's important that what we have on the bond question, and I know that this community continually supports open space and continually supports roads and sewers and utilities, and so those are important things that residents care about. And with the capacity that we have, I think that it is the correct approach. So those are my comments, and thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Hanson. Commissioner Hamilton?
Am I off mute?
Yes, you are.
Okay, good. This analysis is just spot on. It's really strong information, exactly what we need. I strongly support the concept of going with scenario 3. In ecological risk assessment, that's called bet hedging, and it's that self-explanatory. The idea of being conservative now to see how things trend in the next couple of years under the circumstances, to me is the smartest thing to do, and we retain options, but given the risks of potential further economic downturns, because we all know how things are trending now, and there was a lot of discussion of things getting better, and as soon as nationwide things started to open, things are not getting better. We have not seen all the economic fallout from that. The potential of having some real estate impacts to those, property value impacts over the next 2 years is a real risk. Whether it happens or not, hopefully it doesn't. But this gives us options, and we maintain our options by going with 20 million this year. So thank you.
Thank you for your feedback, Commissioner Hamilton. Commissioner Garcia?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Great presentation, Manager Miller's. Like the commissioner said, spot on. Can't get any more detailed than this. Catherine and I have worked together for many years, and I'd just like to give her and basically a lot of the individuals that work in the county that we're during this crisis that's happening worldwide is we're actually very fortunate to have Catherine because she's her and I sometimes talk about being very conservative, very conservative. But in times like these, you know, luckily all of our employees get furloughs. They're still working. They're still on the payroll, and thank you, Manager Miller, for that. Also like to thank the county assessor because without the tax assessor and the valuation of him and his team going out there and getting a valuation for all these properties, obviously we wouldn't be where we are. I also agree with option 3, as the commissioners have, I think some of them have stated, but just wanted to mention all that for the record. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Garcia, and I would ditto the comments of my fellow commissioners. I think this was a great presentation, and again, thank Manager Miller and staff for all their hard work. If there's not any other questions, I'll ask one more time of the board. Did you have any other questions or comments from the board? Okay.
So,
Hearing none, go ahead, Manager Miller.
So, Mr. Chair, what I'd like to do, and in the interest of time, if we could bring up Barbara, I think you were the one who had the GO bond things. I'll quickly explain this. This is not something that needs a decision today. And I want to make sure, I know you guys have housing and a regular meeting. So I'm just going to quickly explain this. We have the next couple of meetings. We don't have to determine our bond questions until I'll get with our bond counsel, but the 28th of July and maybe even our first meeting in August to get them on the ballot. So we might have all the way till August 11th. But what we did, and I misspoke, I forgot, in 2016, we actually did 5 questions and the voters approved all of them, and that's phenomenal. But we did water, we did roads, water, wastewater, open space, public safety facilities, and health facilities. Because we're scaling this back, and the ones that we have traditionally done since probably 1998 is open space, roads, and water and wastewater. So we're going back to our 3 staple project questions, and the questions have to be grouped. They have to be specific to the group of projects that are in them. So we would recommend doing an open space question. We would open space, parks and trails question. We would a roads question and a water and wastewater question. And what we put in here, and what I'd like to do for our next meeting, is actually give you what I think would be prime projects for the 2022, so that maybe we can have a good discussion about, well, is that appropriate to be in the 2020 or the 2022? And that might help with the dialogue on these, so you can see we haven't forgotten some of your priority projects. And so that Joey can do the final budget presentation, I just want to put this list out there for you. It's been changing, as you can see. If you go down, Barbara, it changed a little bit. Where the yellow is, just since we sent it to you, because we got some feedback from you, Commissioner Hansen, they all kind of got grouped into one thing, and I wasn't really sure why they were all in one thing. So it's really 3 different projects. Caja del Oro Mill and Inlay is one project. You asked about making sure that Lopez Lane sidewalks are that the construction be funded, but it is going to take us a while to design it. All we have is preliminary, like 3 possibilities. But what we need to do is pick one and actually have it designed and find out how much it's really going to cost to acquire easements and then and build it, so that we have for 2022 a much better number to build into that question. Also, Agua Fria Mill and Inlay, that one is the additional funding that was needed for that. And I believe that it was on as a local government road project. Some of that's already built into the budget. And also in utilities, we had in our first iteration, we had we did have the 400 for the water plan, and we had another one that we're really not ready to put in the question. This is actually a project that is ready to go. And so we took out the 40, 80-year water plan and replaced that with the Romero Park. And then the other project would go to 2022. So I'm not going to go into all these unless you specifically have a question. I'd like to just put this out here for you guys to look at, and then put it on the July 14 BCC meeting for a much longer discussion, as well as the July 28th, before we would ask you to approve the questions, the dollar amounts for each question, and the projects that would go in each question.
Okay, thank you for that information, Manager Miller. Is there any comments relative to the information that Manager Miller just provided to us? I'll go to Commissioner Hansen. Questions or comments?
I want to thank Gary and Manager Miller for Commissioner Garcia. Could you? Somebody's not on mute, but
I'm on mute.
We heard you eating your potato chips.
Thank you. I appreciate this. I think we can have more discussion about it. I recognize we only have like 20 minutes before our next meeting, and I know we all need to have something to eat, and I think we can discuss this at further time. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Commissioner Hansen. Thank you for keeping it brief. You're right. We'll have another opportunity to voice our comments and concerns or any recommendations. Commissioner Garcia, did you have anything?
No, just really quick. I'll have some questions for staff, but I can meet with them later. But item number 5 on the list? I have the old list is Ripley property acquisition. It says District 3. What's that? Does anybody know?
Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Paul Olofsson, are you on the line?
Andrew Miller and Commissioners. The Ripley acquisition is a parcel that is an in-holding within the Cerrillos Hills State Park, and the Park Coalition has received it as a donation, and they would like to transfer it to the county. However, we have to do some of our due diligence to get them to get the property. So it's an acquisition, a donation, and it's just trying to do all the studies and title work, et cetera, to make it clean.
Thank you. I'll get with staff a little later, but good list. Thank you, guys. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner Garcia. So I'm going to go to Commissioner Hamilton. Do you have any questions, comments?
No, I really appreciate having this now, and I assume we all really should spend some time looking at this and getting with staff between now and the next meeting and think. But this is a very good start in my mind for a list. So thank you very much to Catherine and the staff. And
Thank you, Commissioner Hamilton. Commissioner Moreno.
As usual, a good presentation of the numbers. I appreciate all the work that goes into these presentations, and thank you for being so diligent about that. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Moreno, and thank you to all my fellow commissioners, and a big thank you to Manager Miller for the presentation and at least giving us a a little summary so that we will be able to get some questions ready for the next meeting and to look at an approval for this request. Manager Miller, was that it for you, or did you have any other comments?
Mr. Chair, I think that's it. And then hopefully we can do the last item. I think that's on the agenda. I should know capital discussions always take a lot longer than we anticipate. So I appreciate all of your patience on that and all of your comments and feedback and approvals. And so I would just, I think, yeah, the only thing we had left was the direction on final budget. So if Joey can do that, that would be great.
Good afternoon, Chair Roybal, Commissioners. I am here this afternoon to present to you requests for direction on the final budget for fiscal year 2021. We have a final budget presentation to recommend to you today. It totals $333,770,899. Daniel, if you could go to the next slide, please. That is almost $30 million lower than the adopted budget that we have in the current fiscal year 2020. That's an 8.24% decrease over the previous fiscal year adopted budget. Final direction for the fiscal year 2021 budget is needed to confirm the inclusion of any additional direction that the board may have. Since we did the interim budget presentation on May the 26th, and also the direction that we received June 9th during the regular BCC meeting, so that the final budget can be prepared and approved by the BCC by resolution at a future meeting, which would most likely be July 14th, to submit to the New Mexico Department of Finance and Administration by July 31st, so that they can adopt the final budget. And because our fiscal year 2021 starts for the county tomorrow, so we have the rest of today in fiscal year 2020. And we did receive the approval of our interim budget from DFA, just as a side note. Here are our final budget totals by fund. As you can see, I'm not going to go through every one in the interest of time this afternoon, but that information is there for you, totaling the $333,770,899. Next slide. So what is in the final budget? I'm going to go through the main pieces of our operating budget for fiscal year 2021. We have recurring revenue in the amount of $123,246,093. And then we will be using some budgeted cash to bridge that gap between our recurring revenue and recurring expenditures. So the budgeted cash amount that we'll be using is just over $21,131,000. So the total resources now match the total expenditure amount of $144,377,211. And I will at a later slide get into what using that budgeted cash means. Here's our recurring revenue. This should be by source, recurring revenue by source, totaling the $123 million that was on the previous slide. So you can see, and I'll just briefly speak to the GRTs. We did put a reduction, overall reduction of about 30% in the GRT budget for fiscal year 2021. And we are starting to see that decrease already. We did receive June's distribution, which was collection from the month of April. And that was down 17.5% from the previous June's distribution. While hold harmless is actually up, the overall GRT collection and distribution was down. So Daniel, thank you. And here is by department, our different departments, the final expenditure budget for the recommendations, totaling that $144 million in the recurring budget, which is of course part of the overall budget. If we could go to the next slide. Sorry, I'm trying to move along quickly for you. Also in the final budget is personnel, of course. We have no new full-time equivalents, so no new positions in the new budget. There's no cost of living adjustments, no merit increases. We actually spoke with mostly the public safety department and were able to reduce some of the overtime budget by $567,000 for fiscal year 2021 by using some different management practices. We do have the increase, as you know, to the health insurance on both the employer and the employee sides that are built into this budget. We have the hiring freeze that we have mentioned before. The hard hiring freeze has a total of 75.5 positions in there that are frozen from anywhere from 2 to 6 months. Most of them are frozen to 6 months, and that's going to eliminate approximately $2 million from departments' recurring budgets in the upcoming fiscal year. And I will also get into that a little bit more in later slides. And as additional information at the end, you have the list of what those positions are. So overall, the personnel budget is $75,394,797 for all of the county departments. Of that, the frozen positions totaled $2,756,660 that are in a separate pot of money, if you will. So when those become unfrozen and the department is requesting to fill those positions, those will be reviewed at that time. And then if the determination is made to fill those, then we can move that money back into their operating budgets for that purpose. So the hiring freeze information, here are the 75.5 positions by department. Now, these are just the hard freeze positions. We also have a soft freeze, if you will, going on where we would like each department to keep about a 10% vacancy rate. And so in order to do that, that's normally naturally happens anyway during the course of retirements or people leaving the positions. And so we're going to try to maintain that 10% vacancy rate so that we can maintain a little bit more operating budget just in case the revenues don't end up coming in like we're anticipating that they are. So if the hiring freeze information, if we did fully budget those positions, that would equate to about $4.763 million. And because we're only budgeting the partial year of $2.7 million, those savings of $2 million are in the general fund of almost $1 million and the other funds at just over $1 million. So it was kind of split 50-50 with the savings. Also in the final budget are capital dollars in the amount of $100,394,405. This includes all the fixed assets that we had presented to you previously, and also the capital projects. And although we did include those fixed assets in the budgets for fiscal year 2021 that you had seen and approved previously, we are going to be delaying purchases that in specifically the general fund, but all funds where we have fixed assets budgeted until we can determine that our revenues are coming in and we are seeing those materializing at the expected rates. And as per county policy, if there's any fixed asset that is a vehicle or vehicle related, that will still have to continue to go through the VERB for approval and review. Also included in this budget is almost $25 million in debt service. Our outstanding GO bonds total $119,705,000, and our outstanding revenue bonds total $65,000. Transfers between funds total $63,327,712. And of those, most of that is going to be typically from the general fund at almost $41 million. And then also debt service at over $10 million and to and from special revenue funds at $12.2 million. And I do have an additional slide at the end as well that has all of that detailed out as exactly what is transferring out. So the budgeted cash I had mentioned earlier, we were using the $21 million to bridge that gap for recurring revenues to recurring expenditures. And this is typical. Each year, the BCC adopts a balanced budget where the anticipated revenues match the anticipated or estimated expenditures. And the revenues often will come in higher than anticipated because of our conservative budgeting that we do. And the budgeted expenditure amounts, typically we don't exhaust those full budgets. And so that leaves a cash balance at the end, which falls to the bottom, that we can then use to in future years. So the budgeted cash proposed to be used in fiscal year 2021 was actually generated in fiscal year 2020. And these fund balances, or the cash balances, this 21 million that I'm talking about with balancing recurring to recurring, is actually, it's not part of the county reserves, and it is money that we had realized this year in the revenues, and also from those departments when we were doing all those budget cuts, as you recall. The departments had committed to leaving funds in their fund balances that by the end of the year, so that we were able to help bridge that gap for next year, and that's realizing that. Also, as part of this budgeted cash, we have our capital projects and fixed assets. That's the bulk of what we're using budgeted cash for, which just is carrying forward from the current year. That totals almost 96 million.
Excuse me, Joey, I just want to interject here that we typically do have excess revenues and unexpended expenditures fall out of the budget and have that cash to budget the following year. And that's why we don't have to use our reserves. I do just want to state, though, that don't expect that in this year's budget. We budgeted so much tighter this year that we're likely not to have excess. So, but because of last year's budgeting, that's what's going to help carry us through this year. Let's hope by next year, all of this COVID-19 stuff is gone, and we'll see our revenues come back by July of next year, so that we don't have to worry about, coming up with another 20 million to close the gap. I just wanted to interject that, because yes, we can sustain that for this year. We could maybe even sustain it for part of the following year, but then we would start really eating into our reserves. So just tossing that in the conversation.
Thank you, Manager Miller. Chair Roybal, Commissioners. And as a side note, also with budgeted cash, this is something that we typically use every year. For instance, last year, our budgeted cash totaled $124.5 million. So we're actually budgeting less cash in the upcoming fiscal year than we did in the previous year. So these are where we are talking about receiving the additional budgeted cash. Our recurring revenues right now, as of yesterday, we're coming in at over $10.6 million higher than what we're budgeted. And that was just as of yesterday. So we still have some that will be accrued from throughout the end of this fiscal year into fiscal year 20's budget. And then because of the departments leaving some of their expenditures on the table, and then also the natural process of just operating business, there's always going to be some of your operating expenditures remaining. The amount left there is going to be over 12 million. So the total that's going to fall to the bottom is almost 23 million, and we're going to use the 21.1 million of that for recurring to recurring for fiscal year 21. And with that, I am requesting approval for a resolution that will be coming to you on the 14th of July for our fiscal year 2021 final budget amount of $333,770,899. And after this slide, I believe there are several slides with additional information. And if you had any further questions on that, I stand for any questions.
Thank you, Joey. Is there any questions from the board? Commissioner Hansen, did you have any questions or comments?
So Joey, this is on our board packets. I went through the entire board packet. I must have missed this. Is that where it was located?
Chair Roybal, Commissioner Hansen, yes, ma'am. It was on the board docs this morning, for sure. I believe it was placed on there yesterday.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, in addition, this presentation was emailed to all commissioners last night.
Last night. Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
It's really not enough time, but I understand that we're under these situations. I did look over some of the things that were sent last night, but it would be helpful if we had at least a day to look things over. But thank you. Thank you, Joey, for a very concise, clear presentation. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Commissioner Hanson. Commissioner Hamilton?
Hi, first of all, I wanted to say I went through this and it's just an excellent presentation. The organization of information was such that I really had no questions. I could interpret it all just from looking at it. So I really appreciate that. It's unusual for this kind of complex budget to have this kind of good summary. You mentioned soft hiring freeze, trying to hold open. I just wanted to confirm that any potential savings from that are not already accounted for in this, the balance of the budget, because we've gotten it down to a balanced budget. Those would be in addition, I assume. Soft hiring freezes that can be maintained.
Chair Roybal, Commissioner Hamilton, yes, ma'am, that is correct. Anything that is not filled at the beginning of the fiscal year, all those dollars will continue to be saved in the department's budgets.
Okay, and then, I just wanted to comment that that's an important idea, and I generally support it, assuming that there's some discretion department to department, because I know of a couple of positions in particular in the fire department. Lots of them are on the hard freeze, and that's just fine. But there are a few that, if there's the potential for discretion with respect to how needed the position is, that would be good. Otherwise, I really do support this. I think this is well thought out, and I support this budget as presented. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner Hamilton. Commissioner Garcia? Commissioner Garcia?
Yeah, no, thank you. Great presentation. No questions. Thank you.
Commissioner Moreno?
No questions. I'm
Thank
good.
you, sir.
Good presentation.
Thank you, and I would agree with my fellow commissioners. I haven't had enough time to go through this completely, but what I did see, I thought it was a great. It's really easy to interpret, so I'm glad to see that. Now on this, we do need action on this item today, correct?
Chair Roybal, no, sir. We are putting this on the July 14th to adopt the resolution to adopt the final budget as presented today and recommended.
Okay, so you just want to.
Chair, actually, I'm sorry if I could, and I apologize for interrupting. We would like confirmation via a vote that we have captured all of the direction from the board, so that we know as we prepare and implement the budget for the fiscal year that begins tomorrow that we have captured your desires. But there will be a final formal approval via resolution. But as we prepare that documents for the meeting that occur in 2 weeks from now, again, that vote would give us that comfort level that we've got it all right and that there won't be any changes when that formal item is brought forward.
Okay, thank you, Attorney Schiffer. And that was my invitation. That's why I thought we needed some sort of today. So with that being said, what's the pleasure of the board?
Mr. Chair?
Commissioner Hamilton?
Yes, I would make a motion supporting the analysis done in this budget and the direction and the material information that was laid out in this budget. So just for clarity, I support the motion is in support of what was presented.
I'll second it, Mr. Chair. This is Rudy.
I support it.
Commissioner Garcia? Or is that what I heard?
Yes. I second it, or Commissioner Moreno seconded it. I think his second is fine, but I support it, yes.
Okay, so so I have a motion from Commissioner Hamilton, and it sounds like a second from Commissioner Moreno and Commissioner Garcia. I apologize, I couldn't tell who it was that had said that earlier. So we have a motion and a second. Is there anything else under discussion? Okay, hearing none, I'm going to go to a roll call vote. Commissioner Hanson?
Yes.
Yes.
Commissioner Hamilton, I think you might be on mute.
No, I said, yes, sorry.
Okay, no worries. Commissioner Moreno?
Yes.
Commissioner Garcia?
Yes.
And a yes from Commissioner Roybal. So that direction passes unanimously. And so we look forward to having more conversation and a final approval in July. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr.
Okay,
Chair,
Manager, yes?
just a preemptive
Commissioner
question.
Hamilton?
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Thank you. I'm sorry. I just wondered preemptively if we might have a 5-minute break between meetings.
Yes, absolutely. I was thinking more like 10, but
I was thinking more like 15.
okay, well, let's go with 15. Okay, so right now we do have
I think we're losing the chair. He's freezing up the internet connection.
it's the business correct announcements. Do any of the announcements?
Mr. Chair, just
If
really.
not, then I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. Do I hear a motion to adjourn? Commissioner Moreno?
Second.
Commissioner Garcia, go ahead. So we have a motion from Commissioner Garcia and a second from Commissioner Hamilton.
Yes.
Commissioner, okay, so we have, I'm going to go to roll call vote. Commissioner Moreno? Commissioner Moreno, are you in, we're going to a roll call vote?
Yes. Yes.
I think the chair, we all heard you, Commissioner Moreno, but I think the chair's reception is freezing up.
Oh, okay.
His screen is frozen again. Commissioner Hanson, can you close the meeting?
I will finish the roll call vote. Commissioner Garcia,
Yes.
Commissioner Hamilton,
Yes.
Myself, Commissioner Hanson, yes. We'll see you all in 15 minutes which means that let's say 1:20 at the Housing Board.
And I'll have, Tessa Jo's already started that meeting, so I'll have her announce that it'll start at 1:20.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thanks.